You're tuned in to HorrorSlop, where the stories are rotting, truth is twisted, and sleep, forget about it.
Yeah, welcome to the pit. It's gross, it's creepy, and honestly, it's kind of my vibe. Hope you like nightmares, because tonight's tale, it slithers.
Straight from the darkest corners of Reddit. Real stories, real fear, and just enough blood to stain your soul.
So at least grab your bed sheets, so grab a flashlight, and maybe a therapist.
This is HorrorSlop. Every night starts somewhere, and this is where yours begins. First story, first chill. Let's see if you make it to the end.
I discovered a bazaar where blood and bone were the only currency. It wouldn't let me leave until I bought something, by Theskert Scholar. But then came the day I wandered into the other market. It was a normal day. I had just purchased some ripe fruit from a familiar stall, when I noticed something I had passed over many times before. I was frightened. I turned to face my attacker. It was an old man, jowls hanging down to match the length of his abnormally large ears. His face was pockmarked with the remnants of forgotten diseases he had conquered, and his eyebrows grew so thick they hung low across his eyes like fringe. His back was stooped and crooked, yet he walked with no cane. Judging by the hand on my arm, he was stronger than he looked. "Do not go." Those were the stranger's parting words. He shuffled away, looking nervously behind him as if the alley were going to pursue him. Curiosity. I tried to ask my new friends about the alley. Each time I did, it felt like the air itself froze in place. Without hesitation, they each told me the same thing: do not go through it. Hao Yang went on to further explain that while there were people that did go inside on occasion, each time they did, they came back, different. Despite his warnings, my fascination grew. I was drawn to that alley, staring at it for hours and hours. My curiosity started feeling more like hunger. Many days I would strain my neck trying to see what was happening on the other side. I was yet again staring at that damned alleyway. The impulse to explore overtook me like a fever. It crept down my body and made me tremble with the desire. Emboldened by the feeling, I checked my surroundings for a moment. My first observation. It was almost a mirror copy of the other bazaar. The same placement of booths, the same distance between vendors. Even the same colors on the tents. But it wasn't entirely the same. There was something off. It was deserted of shoppers. I was the only customer there. Shopkeepers manned each booth, but they were the only other human beings in the whole place. Each stall sold a dizzying variety of goods, but it wasn't produce. Their shelves and stands were full of other strange items. Knives, dolls, symbols written on ragged material I couldn't identify. Across the surface of the nearest table were bones and devices with purposes I could not begin to understand. All of them were smiling widely, and focused directly on me. And they were waiting for my side of the exchange. My curiosity had been sated. The feelings of danger were returning. I wanted to leave. Now. When I looked where the alley had been, it took a moment to process what I was seeing. My heart sank into my stomach. Where there had been a gap in the buildings, there was now a solid wall. It was like the buildings themselves had drawn together, closing the gap. You couldn't have stuck a knife in it, the crack was so tight. I looked up and down, hoping I had just misremembered the alley's placement. I hadn't. In my ever-frantic searching, I could find no openings of any kind. "Buy something," the woman said, her teeth glinting in the red glow of the sunset. One leg. The concept seemed so absurd, so unreal, but the owner confirmed my suspicions when she grasped the blade's handle and turned back to face me. "Would you like to pay now?" I quickly set down the die and backed away. The owner made no move to follow me. They just kept smiling, and informed me they had many other goods to choose from, and they were open to negotiating price. I went to several other booths and asked for directions on how I could leave. All said the same thing: buy something. Each time I tried to select an item, the brutal prices were given with the same nonchalant attitude as the first. An eye. A hand. My genitals. They said this casually as if they were simply speaking of different cash denominations. At any crowded street market, there is always a dull murmur of noise, an underlying layer that a patron may stand on to know that they are not alone. There is always some transaction, some exchange being made, and quiet is never allowed to linger long. I started to panic. I began to try every method of escape. I ran up the length of the street, but just when I thought I had made a good distance from my starting point, I would find myself back where I had begun. I tried all the doors to the building, but they were locked. I went crazy with fear, and tried to bash the wooden slats in with the heel of my foot. Instead of my friends, I saw those same strange booths, those strange perverse shopkeepers smiling and waving. All waiting for me to buy. It was weeks before I broke down and bought something. At some point, the rats ran out, and the water dried up. I began to starve. I could see the bones in my forearms, and the constant gnawing of hunger began to drive me insane. I counted my ribs to pass the time. It was in my lowest that I had a sudden moment of clarity. It was the middle of the day, and the sun was beating me about the head with its heat. I had resorted to drinking my own urine, which had taken on a dark brown cast. It smelled foul. My mind was fractured, but one coherent thought shot through me, unifying the pieces for a moment. It was as if someone had spoken directly into my ear. I was going to die, unless I bought something. I went up the length of the street, shuffling on malnourished legs. It was painful, but it was possible. I greeted shopkeepers and began to haggle. I tried my earlier strategy of choosing cheap-looking items, but found that looks were deceiving. These often were the most expensive. One small handkerchief would have cost me all 4 of my limbs. The shop owners would not be talked down. If they wanted an arm, they might settle for a forearm, but never a hand. If they wanted a leg, a foot would never do. 5 fingers might become 4, but never 1. That was when I found a miracle. I found the skull. On my second go-through, I reluctantly asked its price. 1 finger. The shopkeeper pointed upwards with his index. I had found it. The cheapest item. Its price was still steep. Had it been at the beginning of my stay at the other market, I would have balked at paying. But with starvation comes context, and a finger began to feel like a bargain. But I made the mistake of looking at the skull again. Its empty sockets felt like 2 holes of unfathomable depth. As I looked, I imagined myself falling into them until my body and soul were dissolved in the perpetual night. I hated it. Even in my weakened state, I wanted nothing to do with that skull. But my third journey up and down the street made me so dizzy I had to sit down. I was running out of time. I went to the booth, and agreed to the skull's price. I considered a single chop, but I wanted to limit the damage done to the rest of my hand. I couldn't get the right angle from that vantage. Besides, I needed to do the chopping with my off hand. When I had gone to take the index finger from my left, the shopkeeper had shaken their head. Other hand. The right one. It took an hour, but I eventually settled on a course of action. I took a deep breath, and pulled my index finger back in a sharp jerk. The pain reached me before the snap. I bit into my tongue, tasting fresh blood, as I made sure there was a break in the bone by jerking my finger back and forth. The burning in my hand was white hot, and I felt the broken ends of bone grating against each other. I screamed into my closed mouth, trying to muffle the sound. Hoping that my adrenaline would keep me going, I took the Dedeo and began sawing. I threw it down on the counter, and shoved my hand into my armpit. I needed to get out of here, and then maybe I could find a doctor who could stop the bleeding. The shopkeeper took their time, examining the finger, going over it again and again. At one point, they took out a jeweler's glass and examined the severed end. I saw spots, and I dry heaved. After 2 long minutes, the shopkeeper nodded. My offering was satisfactory. He extended the skull to me. I don't want it, I told him. My heart leapt. There was the alley. Open. I could see the markets on the other side. I went as fast as I could to it, afraid I would blink and the alley would close. I threw my body into the slit, and pushed forward with force. In a burst of speed, I left the alley. I was bombarded with a blast of people shouting, haggling, and complaining about subpar product. I was back. On my bedside table, was the skull. Once he was sure I was recovering, he stopped showing up at the hospital. I think we frightened him, the skull and I. Ironically, the only welcoming part of the market was the alley. It was always there, waiting, almost beckoning me to step through again. I had acquired no souvenirs on my world exploring trip. I didn't have room for them. But the skull followed me home. I tried to leave it in 3 separate hotel rooms. Each time, it would appear again in my bag, nestled comfortably in my clothes and watching me from the depths of my suitcase. On the boat home, I tossed it into the ocean. That night, when I came to my bunk, it was on my bedspread. A few drops of salt water graced its cranium like a perverted aspersion. It's been years since then. Years that I purchased with my finger at the other market. But even still, I am not free. My time is running out. I've finally discovered the true price of the skull, the fine print I passed over in my haste to pay the low price. I know better. A final bit of advice from a man senile by his own hand. Don't be cheap. It will cost you.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
How Do I Get My Girlfriend to Knock Off This Annoying Habit, by Queen of Themiths. And number X200B. And number X200B. It's so dumb, I know, but she's always whistling this weird song, and it really gets on my nerves. My mom kept telling me that once you move in with someone, you discover all of the quirks they've been hiding from you, and it's not like I didn't expect that to be true. But for some reason, this is just an ongoing issue with us, and I don't know what to do. So, I finally said something a few nights ago. I was going over some legal documents for work, and she just starts whistling like crazy, on and on. And I'm trying to just block it out, but it's seriously excessive. Like, I know you guys are probably thinking that I was overreacting, but it felt like she was whistling right into my ear, and it just frayed my last bit of patience. As calmly and nicely as I could, I called out to her and asked her to quiet down. She didn't reply. I asked her again, and she still didn't answer, so I left the bedroom and found her in the living room, watching a movie. She wasn't whistling anymore, and for some reason, that really irked me. It felt like she was messing with me. And she just looked over at me, like she didn't know what my deal was. I asked her if she could stop whistling so much, and she told me she wasn't whistling. Now, I get that maybe she doesn't realize she's doing it, but no one whistles that much and doesn't notice. It's not really like her to mess with me like that, and I don't know what she's trying to get out of this. I thought maybe she was teasing or playing a joke, but she had to see how annoyed I was. I asked her again to just not whistle so loudly, and she didn't answer. There was tension in the room, and it felt like our first fight since moving in together. Even though she didn't whistle for the rest of the night, I couldn't focus on my work anyway because I was upset about the confrontation. Then, of course, the next night she was whistling again. I hear her when she comes home from work, and she keeps going for at least an hour. I didn't want to have another fight, so I just hung out in the bedroom and listened to her move around for a while. I felt like I was blowing things out of proportion, but honestly, how hard is it to just not whistle all the time? It was no big deal when it was now and then, but I feel like she whistles more than she even talks to me now. So I'm sitting up in the room, thinking about that, and that's probably why I was worked up when I finally came down. And number X200B. She was cooking dinner, which is sweet, but she was still whistling. So I said, softly, "Hey honey, maybe we should put on some music instead, so you don't have to fill the silence with whistling." I tried to play it off like a joke, but I knew she'd probably see through it and get annoyed again. She didn't even turn to face me, just huffed and kept cooking. After a minute, I told her I was sorry about the other night, but the whistling just sort of strikes my ear wrong, and if she could try not to whistle so much and so loudly, it would make my life a lot easier. I feel like I was being fair. I know it seems controlling and nitpicky, but it was bothering me a lot. We all have our things, you know. I try not to chew loudly at the table because it bothers her, so why can't she just stop whistling sometimes for me? And number X200B. But she totally freaked out. She turned around and told me she wasn't whistling and she didn't know what my problem was. At this point, I don't get why she was doing this. It obviously wasn't funny for either of us, and she seemed genuinely upset, so I don't know why she kept provoking me. I asked her what her deal was, why she was so defensive about the stupid whistling, and she told me to shut up. She told me she was sick of talking about it, like I was the one being unreasonable. And number X200B. She fell over and smashed her head on the counter, but I swung the pan again before she hit the ground. I think I hit her maybe 3 or 4 times. I don't remember, but I feel horrible. There was blood everywhere, and her jaw might be broken. No, I think it is for sure. I couldn't believe I'd lost my temper like that, and I have no idea how we can move past this. I feel so ashamed for letting things get physical, regardless of how much she might have been provoking me. And number X200B. But here's the kicker. She's still fucking whistling. And I asked her nicely to please stop, but now she won't even pause. For 2 days she's just been lying on the kitchen floor with her eyes rolled back and her mouth hanging open, just marinating in congealed blood, and she's still fucking whistling. I don't know what to do. I don't want to break up, but this is just too much. I just need her to shut up. Just shut up. Just shut up. Just shut up. Just shut up.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite stirs. Hope you're hungry.
I had a disturbing conversation with my 7-year-old daughter, by Sam Haysom. Dad, I saw a zombie. I put the kettle back and picked up the milk. Sighed inwardly. I really had to be more careful about what I watched on TV in the evening. Rosie has a habit of sneaking downstairs in the night, and last week she caught me watching The Walking Dead, of all things. She's had zombies on the brain ever since. I keep telling her they're not real, but it doesn't seem to make a difference. Yeah, but I saw one. I know, darling, but I already checked the back garden twice yesterday, and I can promise you it's a zombie-free zone. I had the mug half raised to my lips, but now I put it down again. I turned to look at Rosie. Her hair was windswept and her little cheeks were red, as if she'd been running. As I watched Rosie now, I noticed her face growing redder. She looked away from me, down at the kitchen floor, and scuffed her feet. "Dad, I only went a little way down," she said. "I promise." I was chatting to Mr. Henderson, because I saw him in his back garden. I said hello and made him jump. "Listen to me, sweetheart. I know you didn't go far or anything, but I don't want you." "I came right back after too, Dad." Rosie interrupted. She was staring up at me now, blue eyes large and pleading. "I promise." "And I even said no when Mr. Henderson offered me an ice cream, because I know you don't like me taking stuff from strangers." Rosie was babbling now, her voice whirring like a motor. But I'd stopped listening. My mind was still stuck on something she'd said a moment before. Mr. Henderson really wanted me to come in and have one. I took another sip of tea and frowned. That wasn't good. I didn't mind the neighbors chatting to my little girl, but I didn't like the thought of them inviting her in. Not without us there. Not even if they were just kind, lonely old men. I made up my mind to go round and visit Mr. Henderson later, and to tell him that myself, kindly, of course, but firmly. "Daddy, please don't stop me playing in the garden. I promise I won't sneak out again. I don't want the zombie to get me." Cold fingers ran up my spine. "What?" "Well, I didn't realize kids could be zombies, too. I thought it was only grown-ups. But I guess I must have been wrong, 'cause the one in Mr. Henderson's basement looked just like a little boy."
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse. In the best way.
My wife got a skin graft from a cow, now she thinks she'll give birth to an animal, by Sweetly Phoenix. My pregnant wife got in a car accident a few months ago. Thank God it didn't kill anyone, but it tore a chunk out of her arm. The doctors decided she needed a skin graft. Part of her was not like it should be anymore. She was not completely human. I told her she was just having anxiety. I know that's dismissive. I just didn't know what to say. I knew the car accident was traumatic, and so was the surgery, but how was I honestly supposed to respond to that? I pushed my worry down. I wanted to focus on the excitement of being a parent, and the miracle that my wife was okay. "What the fuck are you talking about?" I snapped, fighting not to raise my voice. I told her to go back to bed. She just said part of her wasn't like it should be anymore. She said she wasn't completely human. I decided if she didn't start acting normal by the end of the week, I would take her to the doctor. But I would never get the chance. "What the hell is this?" I shouted. My wife turned her head and smiled. Then I saw her breasts, dripping with sickly yellow. I took in a breath of rotten air, and it finally hit me what it was. The kitchen was smeared with spoiled breast milk. There was the faint sweetness of birth behind it all. I was entirely frozen. I needed to call the hospital. I didn't understand any of this. I didn't even know how she was producing breast milk this early, or how it had spoiled inside her body, and turned sick and yellow. I needed to call the fucking hospital. I had tried to push my worry down, tried to focus on the excitement of parenthood. But this was more than anxiety or trauma, it was more than I could handle. And I failed my wife by not realizing that. "The baby's coming," she shouted with a grin. Pained groans began to slip from her mouth, but her smile never faltered. She widened her stance and her legs began to tremble. The yellow liquid was pooling onto the floor now, rancid and sweet and eating at everything it touched. Tears crept in her eyes and flowed down her cheeks, until she was howling in pain. But the joy never left her face. I watched in horror as a mound of flesh fell from my wife's body, squirming and wet.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
Did you know that early astronomers thought there were oceans on the moon? I asked, looking up from my book. My mom shifted in her bed, a tangle of 4 tubes shifting with her. Of course. The moon seems like the perfect place to find an ocean. Well, they didn't find any oceans, I reminded her. For all of the pain she was in, all of the fear she must feel, my mother always had the kind of laugh that could light a candle. We were in her hospital room, the same one we'd been in and out of for the last year and a half. Sometimes we had a roommate, sometimes we were alone. Always she held steady enough for both of us, the rock I tied my hope to, the wall against the grief I knew was coming. Cancer is such a mundane word for something so hungry and cruel. I've noticed medicine does that a lot, covers horror with tedious language like a bed sheet over a body. Malignant. Inoperable. Metastasized. Terminal. How are we feeling today? The doctor asked. He came in less and less often. We could all sense this was the final stay in this room. Just brilliant, Doc, my mom said, struggling to sit a little higher. We can still go dancing later if you'd like. Though we'll have to ask for my son's blessing. Ever since his dad died, Brian's been very protective of me. I put on a stern face. I'll need to know your intentions are pure, Dr. Bradshaw. As the driven snow, he played along. But I might need a rain check on the dance, Ms. Willen. I'm not as young as I used to be. Right there with you, Tiger, she said. The final 2 faces were both weeping. All 4 shapes were too human, too raw. There was a weirdness to the stone tree that put people on edge, but I'd grown used to every shade of weird you can imagine. My mother's side of the family was full of stories of unexplained luck and mysterious tragedy, whispered secrets, and unexplained deaths. By all accounts, my maternal grandmother was either an honest-to-goodness witch or full-bore, high-caliber crazy, or both. Probably both. There's nothing left to try? I asked, fighting down the urge to throw up. Anything, experimental, untested, anything. Mom lived in a small ranch house 10 miles outside of town. There wasn't much in the way of neighbors besides some woods and a creek slithering through her yard. It was a windy, warm March afternoon when I took my dying mother home. That night I began my work. I was going to turn the house into a bunker, a maze death could never solve. I would keep my mother safe, I would find a way to keep her alive. It took me nearly a week to finish carving the symbols and signs into the walls, the floors, even the trees on the property. Sometime around noon on the 3rd day, on my back in the crawlspace etching strange marks onto the underside of the floor, it struck me how ridiculous I was acting. There was no proof that any of the information in the little red book was anything other than the delusional ramblings of a bizarre woman I'd only met once or twice as a child. For all I knew, the runes meant to ward off death were actually a grocery list written in Cantonese. But I was desperate, and every time I saw my mother she looked frilier, more fragile. So I continued carving and praying and building layers upon layers of protections to keep death far away. Making my marks took me all over the property. It was a big yard, nearly 3 acres that blended gradually into the surrounding forest. I wasn't able to pinpoint the exact boundary where cultivated met nature, the edges simply bled together, but I did my best to create a clean border with lines between the symbols. I'd always loved the wildness here, the way you could wander a few hundred yards away from home and feel like you traveled hundreds of years into the past to somewhere primal. This was the perfect playground for a kid, whether I was out exploring trails or trapping minnows or spending the summer building yet another treehouse, convinced this would be the final one. It never was. I was never satisfied. There was a small candle in the bottom of the box, dirty white as stained paper. When I took the candle from its case, the smell made me gag. Have you ever walked past a portable toilet in the dog days of summer? When it's so hot, the blue plastic has started to warp and bubble. Imagine that smell distilled into a finger's worth of wax. I brought the candle downstairs, placed it on the dining room table and set it alight. I didn't think she had any weight left to lose before she was nothing but bone and memory. Her skin was rice paper over a frame that seemed smaller every day. Her eyes, though, no matter how fragile the rest of her became, remained two little lanterns against the dark, blue and bright and alive. I didn't make it very far, I answered. And I wasn't really running away, only stretching my legs. My mother turned so she was looking out the window into the yard. I was so scared when I found your note, the one saying you were leaving. My hands were shaking like you wouldn't believe when I called the sheriff and then Mr. Jonas down the way. It felt like we were searching for you for half the night, even though it couldn't have been more than an hour before we found you there, lost in the woods, wandering around and shivering. You hadn't even brought a jacket. I'm glad, too, my mother said, and I noticed her wipe away a tear. I'm so glad. That hour you were gone, Brian, that was the most afraid I've ever been. Afraid we wouldn't find you, afraid you might be hurt or worse. I couldn't hardly breathe through the fear. Then, suddenly, you were there and the relief nearly knocked me over. I think we stayed up together the rest of the night watching the stars. I wanted to make sure you could find the North Star in case you ever got lost again. I squeezed her hand. I was scared, too. I was afraid I'd be stuck out there. What made you think of it? It's okay, she said, squeezing my hand back. It's okay. I've known real fear, and what I'm feeling now, it's not like that. I'm scared, I guess, but I'm at peace with it. I had such a beautiful life. I'm so glad I got to meet you, to be your mom. But I won't let you go without a fight, I added silently in my mind. Something was trying to get to my mom. The strangeness began the day after I lit the candle. At first it was small blips, tiny wrongs that I chalked up to my imagination. Doors I knew I'd closed at night were open in the morning. Food began to rot and spoil within days of me bringing it into the house. Eventually, food would go bad almost immediately. Every few hours the television in the living room would either turn off if it was running, or on if it was off. Clocks would stop overnight, always at 3:03 a.m. Shadows began sticking to the corners of rooms independent of any light sources. The shadows were stubborn and they would linger for as long as I would stare, then disappear when I blinked. I began hearing bumps and knocks at all hours, and sometimes, when I'd enter an empty room, I had a sharp, fleeting certainty that it was only just occupied. Days marched into weeks and the wrongness only grew deeper. My mom and I both lost sleep to vivid nightmares that we couldn't remember when we woke up. Only the echoes remained, but those were enough to leave my pulse sprinting until morning. I started sleeping in a chair in my mother's room. I did this to comfort her if she woke up confused during the night, but also because, if I'm being honest, I was too scared to sleep alone. I felt like a child running into his parents' room, convinced there was a monster under the bed. Thing is, maybe there was. About a month after leaving the hospital we were living like zombies. The dining room couldn't contain the smell of the candle anymore. The entire house was clogged with the scent. Tiny noises had graduated into full-on laughs and screams and whispers in the rooms around us. Something kicked the bathroom door so hard while I was taking a shower that the hinges warped. I covered every mirror in the house. I'd started to see things in the corners looking back at me, half-hidden faces, shapes that skittered away as soon as I turned around. Mom was drifting further and further away. She had long moments of confusion where she'd forget my name, forget where we were. Sometimes, she'd think I was my dad. Other times, she'd just stare at the wall for hours, growing fainter and fainter each day like a Polaroid left in the sun. "Mom!" I shouted, running in bare feet out of the room. I found her in the dining room, the door wide open. She was standing at the table, frail as a neglected scarecrow, bobbing back and forth. Her hands were hovering over the candle. The flame was out. "Why did you do that?" I whispered. "Mom. Mom, are you okay?" "What's going on?" she asked, looking around the dark room. "Where?" "You're okay," I told her. "You were sleepwalking." "I was having the most unusual dream," Mom mumbled. "There were so many stars, and..." Then I heard scratching. It was coming all throughout the house, deep tearing sounds at the walls around the dining room. Footsteps came immediately after, heavy and fast. Somewhere in the house a window shattered. The shadow was disappearing like a puddle sinking into the floor. There was a texture to it, oily and too slick to hold. I thought of my mother the night she found me lost in the woods, the night I'd run away. Her face filled my memory, her lighthouse smile. I remembered the relief I felt when she found me, the overwhelming love. I held on to that feeling, clutching it close. A sense of ripping and being dragged. It was a riptide with a mind of its own. But I held on. It could not shake me. I woke up under a field of stars. I was lying in soft grass, still wearing my pajama bottoms and an old t-shirt. It was cool, wherever I was, but comfortably so. I stood up. There were trees all around me, tall and close, stitched together with shadows. Immediately to my right, there was a road that ran straight as far as I could see, blurring into the horizon. But the stars, they were like nothing I'd ever seen before. Bright ribbons of northern lights rippled above me in green and blue and purple. Stars lit the sky like millions of lanterns floating on a still ocean. The moon shone sharpest of all, a spotlight hanging above the tree line, so close I thought I could stretch up and brush its face. "Give her back," I begged. "Please, give her back." "Where to?" I asked. "Where are you taking her?" "Then I won't let you take her." I planted myself in the road. The world was still and solemn around us. The constellations drifted like clouds and a soft breeze stirred the branches. The starry thing didn't respond for a moment. "Your mother was kind and caring. Wherever she goes, she'll have peace," it promised. The creature raised its hand. Did you ever stop to think that death isn't an enemy? Death simply is. It is the natural partner to life. It knows no prejudice or malice, has no designs or ambitions. Your mother spent so long suffering, felt so much pain. Instead of letting her rest, you took it upon yourself to draw her life beyond its given course. You kept her alive but at the cost of stretching her thin, prolonging her sickness, diluting her. Did you keep her alive for her benefit or for yours? I couldn't answer. I shuddered remembering the clawing sounds, the shattered window, and the laughter from empty rooms. "I'm sorry," I whispered. Can they hurt her here? Is she safe? Can I see her?" I asked. "Please. Let me say goodbye." And then the starry thing was gone. I was standing alone on an empty road. "Brian?" I looked out at the road, scanning the trees for any hungry shadows. I don't know where it goes but, promise me you'll be careful." My mom smiled wider. "Of course I'll be careful." I turned, expecting the starry thing. But the man standing on the road was entirely normal. The light from the moon was enough that I could see he had moss-green eyes and a bright shock of red hair. The man came towards us and took my mother's hand. He and I looked so alike, I could see why my mother confused us when she was sick. The man squeezed my shoulder. "She'll be safe, watched over. If the devil himself is waiting on the road ahead, he'll move. Or he'll be moved." I woke up back in my dining room sitting at the table, the unlit candle in front of me. The house was quiet and still. There was no more scratching, no sound or sense of life at all. I walked through every room. The house was empty. I was alone. I've spent the past couple months working on the house, erasing the marks I'd made, fixing up the property. Some nights I take long walks out into the forest. I'm far enough out in the country that on clear nights it's like looking up at a sea of stars. I think about my parents the most during those walks. I grieve and remember in my own way. And I wonder where their road went, if they're still traveling or if they reached their destination. When it's full, I also look up towards the moon. I wonder if my parents had a chance to visit, to search for hidden oceans. I like to think they did, that the moon has at least one Maria, the one I love most. GTM.
Alright, quick break before our next story. Let's check in with our resident spooky dude. Hey, you ever smile, or is your face just stuck that way?
I smiled once. The sky bled. A child vanished. Never again.
Okay, drama. Maybe next time just try a dad joke.
Knock knock. They never made it to the door.
Wow. Fine, stay moody. Anyways, back to the darkness. This next one's got teeth.
My dead girlfriend keeps messaging me on Facebook. I've got the screenshots. I don't know what to do, by Nates. My girlfriend died on the 7th of August, 2012. She was involved in a 3-car collision driving home from work when someone ran a red light. She passed away within minutes on the scene. We had been dating for 5 years at that point. She wasn't big on the idea of marriage, it felt archaic, she said, gave her a weird vibe, but if she had been, I would have married her within 3 months of our relationship. She was vibrant, the kind of girl that would choose dare every time. She was happiest when camping, but a total technophile too. She always smelled like cinnamon. That being said, she wasn't perfect. She always said something along the lines of, "If I cark it first, don't just say good things about me." I've never liked that. If you don't pay me out, you're doing me a disservice. I've got so many flaws, and that's just part of me. So, this is for M. The music she said she liked and the music she actually liked were very different. Her idea of affection was a side hug. She had really long toes, like a chimpanzee. I know that's tangential, but I don't feel right discussing her without you having an idea of what she was like. September 4th, 2013. This is when it began. I had left Emily's Facebook account activated so I could send her the occasional message, post on her wall, go through her albums. It felt too final, and too un-Emily, to memorialize it. I share access with her mother, Susan, meaning, her mother has her login and password and has spent a total of approximately 3 minutes on the website, or on a computer, total. After a little confusion, I assumed it was her. I noticed pretty much immediately that whoever was chatting with me was recycling old messages from M and my shared chat history. The wheels on the bus comment was from when we were discussing songs to play on a road trip that never eventuated. Hello happened a million times. Around this period of time, I stopped being able to sleep. I was too angry to sleep. At this point, some of you may be wondering why I didn't just kill my Facebook profile. I wish I had. I did for a little while. On days when I can't get out there, though, it's nice having my friends available to chat. It's nice visiting M's page when the little green circle isn't next to her name. I was already socially reclusive when M was alive. Her death turned me into something pretty close to a hermit, and Facebook and MMOs are my only real social outlets. On March 25th, I received an answer. Before anyone asks, yes, I had changed the password and all security info countless times. 16th of April. I received this. This seems like word salad. Like all our conversations so far, it's recycled from previous messages she's sent. I hadn't discovered any leads. Facebook had told me the locations her page had been accessed from, but since her death, they're all places I can account for: my home, my work, her mum's house, etc. My response here wasn't bait. Yo, ask Nathan was an in-joke too lame worth explaining, but seeing her say it again just absolutely fucking crippled me. My reaction in real life was much less prettier. I'm not expecting my bond back. 8th of May. I don't really have the words for this. FRE as in G is the first original word she's made. This has given me nightmares that have only started to kick in recently. I keep dreaming that she's in an ice-cold car, frozen blue and gray, and I'm standing outside in the warmth screaming at her to open the door. She doesn't even realize I'm there. Sometimes her legs are outside with me. Going back in time. 7th of August, 2012. I just heard a Facebook alert. I'm too afraid to swap windows and check it.
You feel that? That weird pressure in the room? Yeah. That's the algorithm. It knows you're watching, and it gets real cranky when you don't feed it. A simple ritual helps. Click the little thumbs up, tap subscribe, say its name 3 times into your phone mic. Kidding, probably.
Engagement appeases the darkness. You know what to do.
Good, human. Now, back to the horror.
There's something inside me and it's not mine. I can't sleep. Can't think. Can't even look at myself anymore. It started a year ago. Until I didn't. Cardiac arrest. Out of nowhere. No warning, no chest pain. Just lights out, face first between 2 massive OTR tires. My coworker said my lips were blue by the time they got to me. Paramedics shocked me 3 times on the floor. I flatlined. But I was. Like something got rewired on the way back. My girlfriend left me. I wasn't sleeping very well anymore. My skin felt too tight. I'd jolt awake thinking my heart had stopped. Sometimes I wished it would. Then one night, the phone rang. They had a match. A heart. Perfect fit. No complications. It was happening now. He had no idea how wrong he was. I woke up in a nightmare. Even now, I'm always cold. Doesn't matter the weather. Blankets, heaters, hot showers, it's like something inside me doesn't know how to hold heat. In my heart. Always the same. Fluorescent lights. A white tiled room that smells like bleach and meat. A chair bolted to the floor. Leather restraints. Rust-colored stains on the tiles. Someone strapped in. Male, female, young, old, it changes, but they're always gagged. Always wide-eyed. Always shaking. There's no sound in the dream. Just this horrible hum, like electricity through concrete. The lights buzz. The air tastes like copper. In the dream, I'm always holding something. A scalpel. A pipe. A knife. A torch. I knew these were all tools used for nothing good. I don't remember using any of them, but I would wake up with the weight of the tool still in my hands. The worst part? I wake up with my fists clenched. My breathing slow and steady like I've just finished a ritual. There's blood under my fingernails. Sometimes wet. Sometimes dried. I tried everything. Meds. Therapy. Journaling. None of that explains the scar. Not the one across my chest. That was expected. That scar doesn't belong to me. He pulled it up. I'll never forget the way his face changed. Like he was watching something rot in real time. "Oh, shit," he whispered. "You're not gonna want to know this." But I needed to. The name was redacted, but the notes weren't. Things got worse after that. I couldn't explain it. Couldn't prove it. Couldn't stop it. I'd sit in my car outside grocery stores. Just watching. People. Their routines. Their vulnerabilities. I ran. Collapsed in the street. Threw up in a gutter. No. It replaced me. Then came the worst night. My hands were bloody. My clothes soaked in blood. My mouth tasted like iron. Blood all over the floor. No report. No missing person matching what I remembered. Maybe he's smarter now. He doesn't dream. He remembers. He relives. And now, so do I. He's beating inside me. Last night, I picked up the knife again. And for the first time in months, I wasn't cold.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
Something Went Wrong with My Heart Transplant, by Katrin Ciernan. Not just physically, I've always been afraid of my own shadow. It was unsurprising when the doctors told me my heart murmur wasn't just a heart murmur. A year of tests. A year of therapy, constant trips to the hospital, and I was finally told that it had all been for nothing. My poor weak heart wouldn't last till Christmas. It's a strange thing being told that you're dying. I didn't come to terms with it at first. I drank and I spent my money. I did reckless, stupid things because I was so damn scared. As I was laying in bed on the last night, the thought of Laura swirled around in my head and it wouldn't leave me alone. It was like her name was in flashing lights every time I closed my eyes. It was wrong, I know it was, but I had to see the woman who was giving me her heart. It didn't feel right not to put a face to the one who was saving my life. I knew her name, I knew what ward she was staying on, I had overheard the two nurses discussing it. I wandered down the meandering hallways until I found what I was looking for, taking my time, making sure I didn't miss any name. I guess I had time on my hands now. In the second to last room, she lay in bed. A woman sat on the bed next to her, holding her hand, and my own weak heart stuttered. "Excuse me." I had no idea what to say to her. "I'm Jenna. I'm the person. I'm having surgery tomorrow and..." What I assumed was Laura's mother stood up, and I could tell from the look in her eye that she knew who I was. "Thank you for visiting. I know it's strange, but a part of her is going to be living on in you. I wanted to meet you." I stood there, helpless and lost for words. Laura's mother beckoned me over. "Please," she said. "Don't feel uncomfortable. It's what she would have wanted." I sat on the chair next to Laura. She was a care worker. Looked after battered wives, abused women. Last month she met a guy and... well, I suppose years of training can't help you when you're in love. She ignored the warning signs. And he killed her. She dedicated her life to those who needed her. Laura's mother looked down. I don't know why I did it, but I reached over and held Laura's hand. I squeezed it. She squeezes my hand sometimes as well. I think the doctors called it muscle spasms. Either way, there's none of Laura left in there anymore. I looked at the small crescent moons that had just started to bleed on the palm of my hand. "What's wrong? Is it your heart?" She stumbled over the last words, coming to terms with what she had said. I tried to reassure her and said I'd let the doctors know, and she left with a look of worry on her face. Laura's heart beat so strongly it felt like it would come out of my chest. It did this all the time, and I realized this was what a healthy heart must feel like. So why couldn't I shake my feeling of unease? Laura was in her hospital bed, but her mother was gone. I could hear my heart, Laura's heart, beating in my eardrums so loudly it was painful. I tried to cover them, but my hands were pinned to my sides. Some unexplainable force was moving me towards the motionless figure of Laura on the bed. Her lips were blue and the window had come open, whipping her blonde hair around her face. I was almost on top of her when her eyes flew open. They were milky white, the eyes of someone dead. "Get out," she rasped, her voice guttural. I could hear the heartbeat faster and faster, drumming until I thought I couldn't take it anymore. After about 50 different checkups, the doctors told me that absolutely nothing was wrong with me. They told me my heart was regular, my blood pressure was normal, and that everything was going just swimmingly. I stood in the waiting area, wallowing in my shame and frustration. That heart didn't belong to me. Hello. Good morning, this is the Thames Valley Police. We've called to report an incident that occurred in your flat at around 1:30 a.m. today. I felt a wave of embarrassment. I'm so sorry, I recently had surgery and I wasn't feeling well. I had to have my neighbor drive me to the hospital and I think I panicked a little in the hallway before I left. There was a small silence on the other end of the phone. I did. He's in police custody. We found an automatic weapon on him and we believe he had the intent to harm you. We have an officer currently stationed at your flat who can fill you in depending on how long your hospital stay will be. I thanked him and hung up the phone. For a moment, I leant against the wall, the horror slowly spreading over me. If I had been in my flat 10 minutes later he would have found me.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back down now. Next story's already watching.
Pauline was a sweet woman who lived across the street. We weren't close as kids or teenagers because she was around 5 years older than me, but our parents were friends. I think she babysat me when I was younger too. When my mother learned that Pauline was engaged, she sent me to help on the bridal shower. Poor mom, she thought I was like that because I was too often around boys and needed to learn to be more feminine, but she's got that backwards. That's when I first learned that Pauline and her soon-to-be husband had made a blood oath. We won't. We are soulmates, she assured me. Her naivete made her incredibly beautiful, but it felt really wrong being 21 and thinking that I was so much more mature than a 26 years old. I didn't pursue the matter, but she kept talking about him in a dreamy tone. Aiden would like this, I wish Aiden was here, and so on. Her dreamy tone almost made me believe that soulmates existed and that you could make the person you love the most follow you in death by just willing it. I met Pauline's friends, and we all ended up having some quality girl time. Pauline explained to us all how she believed that you can wake up in the afterlife and start controlling things with your mind. It was all terribly silly when I think back, but Pauline had something about her that made everyone pay attention and marvel at her words. Despite the age gap, we ended up becoming good friends. I think we were finally at an age where it didn't matter anymore. Since I was in college but lived with my parents and didn't need to work, I had a lot of spare time to accompany her to wedding dress fittings, cake tasting and all the little things that were the world for brides. Little by little, I grew to understand her devotion to Aiden. And he was just as crazy about her, if not more. When they were together the world felt like a brighter and warmer place. Like marshmallows slowly melting over my heart. The day of the wedding came, around half a year after her bridal shower. When Pauline arrived, belated as any bride should, there was whispering and disquiet, Aiden wasn't there yet. Soon they realized that Aiden's parents were there, but not his brother. They informed that their other son was supposed to drive the groom as part of his best man's duties. When the devastating news came, everyone wanted to comfort her, everyone wanted desperately to protect her precious heart, but it was too torn apart to notice anyone else. I did my best to be there for my neighbor and friend, but she wasn't there. She was living in delusion, and the only thing you could see leaking into reality was her desolation. I never saw such a deep and heart-wrenching sadness. Pauline refused to take off her dress. She would spend the whole day by the window waiting for Aiden and the whole night crying because she missed him desperately. Every single day. Then one morning, she disappeared for good. No one saw her leaving, and no one saw her at all after that. The only thing that we were able to find, in the small grove behind the house, was her filthy wedding dress. It had 2 large holes poked on her back, like it had grown wings. After finding the dress, everyone who loved Pauline was relieved. Her mother readily admitted that she actually believed that Aiden somehow had come back to take her. Others weren't so fond of the supernatural explanation, but thinking that there was a chance that it happened brought us a sense of closure. Now, you might ask what I believe in. I would laugh bitterly because I don't have this choice to begin with. Being the person who spent the most time watching Pauline those days, it was only natural that I was the one to found her dead in the bathtub. Hiding and subsequently getting rid of her body was the hardest thing I have ever done. Tampering with the dress, though, was eerily healing. Still, I think that she would be pleased to know that I faked her rapture.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
I'm infatuated with her. The two of us were sexually active together but still in the dating phase. We were at that make or break era of a blossoming relationship where we'd either have the talk and formally be in a relationship or we'd start to slowly drift apart. The latter of which I don't think I'd be able to cope with. Honestly, I wouldn't be able to. Almost everything about her captivated me. The way she held her hand over her mouth when she laughed. How she'd caress the pendant of her necklace when she was frightened. How she'd twirl her hair in her finger when she was excited. All of it. Her smell. Her smile. Her eyes. Yeah, I know. It probably makes you sick reading about it. I feel the same way. I was never the hopeless romantic type. But now I can't stop fantasizing about her. I'd think about us doing the long 3-hour hike up to that magnificent view from one of our first dates. To that first kiss, as we overlooked the lights of the city. But this time I'd get down on one knee, bring out the ring, and, well, you know what would happen next. Alright, fine. I'll stop. Yes, this is a girl I'd only been casually dating for a couple of months. I shouldn't be thinking about proposing yet. I know that. I'm just barely able to control myself any longer. I feel as though I'm losing power over the decisions I make. And that brings me to why I'm here writing this out at the moment. It started with the first real thing that troubled me about her. We'd never actually spent a night together. No matter how late she was over, once either of us showed signs of being tired, she'd up and leave. She wouldn't leave awkwardly or in anger. Just a casual kiss goodnight, a smile, and a call me soon. It was something I didn't really even notice the first few times she did it. But after almost 8 weeks of dating, it was becoming strange. I'd have to ask her about it. No, Stephen, listen, she said. She wasn't laughing. It's bad. It's completely out of control. It's not just random words or gibberish. No. It's horrible. I say horrible, disgusting things. She was starting to raise her voice, breath heavy, and tear up. I approached her and held her. I told her it couldn't be that bad. I told her to spend the night. I told her she was probably exaggerating. I told her not to worry about it. I told her that it wouldn't be a big deal. I told her I wouldn't leave to the couch. I'd stay beside her in the bed. At first, I just kept looking at her. This was not at all what I expected. I thought it would be more like the way Tourette's is often portrayed. Just random swearing and shouting. I honestly thought to myself, what will I do if she attacks me right now? What if she really does try to chew the skin from my bones? I was creeped out. I tried to lie back down and ignore her but struggled. I couldn't even close my eyes without thinking, maybe she's sitting up again and staring at me. And then one time I rolled over to look at her, and she was. Her face was pressed right towards mine. Her breath was foul and rotted. Something that was most certainly not normal for her. She spoke again, in the same voice as before. If you don't move to the couch, you'll be dead by morning. And then I thought I heard something. From the bedroom. I listened. And then I heard it again. Stephen. It was that same low and gravelly voice. It sounded like a witch. Still I said nothing. I know you can hear me, Stephen. You're awake now. Why don't you come back into the bedroom? Or maybe you'd prefer if I come to you. And then I heard her once more. Sorry if this spoils your plans. She began laughing. The two of you were supposed to walk that trail again, she started. I wasn't even remotely prepared for what she'd say next. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a problem with sleep talking. It was something much more. Something supernatural. I had never told anybody about my proposal fantasy. There was simply no way she could have known about any of it. This was no longer about merely talking in one's sleep. This was about possession. I can't go back into the bedroom. I have no idea what would happen if I did. Instead, I'm going to wait it out, holding up in my living room until the sun rises. I have a couple more hours yet. I can hear her laughing occasionally in the bedroom. It's still not her voice. Still that same low-pitched cackle. But as I sit on my couch writing this out, here's what scares me the most. Maybe my infatuation and utter obsession with her wasn't normal. I said before that I felt like I was losing control of myself. More so I believe than the typical falling in love story. No. I fear that the infatuation I felt was the entity slowly taking control of me. Of it controlling my thoughts, fears, ambitions, and anxieties. Maybe once I become completely absorbed, a transfer would occur, and she would be free of it. I'm infatuated with her.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse. In the best way.
There's this charity, which I won't name, that handles distribution of something called the Little Miracle Chest. These have been around since the 80s, but they're very limited in scope. It's these colorful toy boxes that are sent out to first-time parents, mostly in the southern East Coast states. They usually contain a couple of goodies, some parental advice books, a Bible, and a couple other things. It's been around for a while, but I don't think a lot of people talk about it. Jonah, he said, shaking my hand. And you must be Henry. You got that right. Glad to be here. It's like I know you already. Do you want the tour? Gotta admit, I said. I'm a bit nervous about the interview. At that point, I didn't know if things were complicated because I didn't want to be a stepdad, or because she'd lied to me. So, when Jonah asked me if I was a nurturing man, that's where my thoughts brought me. I zoned out a little and answered as well as I could. Well, at least you're honest, smiled Jonah. That makes up for a lot. With that, he gave me a tour of the warehouse. Row after row of little miracle chests, all wrapped in cellophane and ready to be shipped out. The little miracle chests are about 4 feet long, 3 feet wide, and has a rounded, treasure chest, kind of lid. The thing is made of some solid kind of wood and has these metal handles bolted to the side. It's heavy, at least 30 pounds. On the side, you got all kinds of classic Americana printed. Boys and girls playing in the sun, a white church, green grass, a rainbow, happy couples leaning on one another. But also a few of adventurous motifs, like lions being ridden by young boys, or little girls feeding unicorns with blue sunflower seeds. It's probably the most sugar-coated wholesome thing you'll ever see, if you haven't seen one already. Before we could enter, Jonah gave me a tap on the back. All right. So we got these headphones. Noise cancelling and all. Whenever you're in the main hall, you need these on at all times, or you'll hurt your hearing. We can't be held liable for that, Henry. We don't got that kind of money. He gave me the headphones and showed me around the warehouse. There was a definite chemical in the air. It was a prickly smell, like old lime and deep ammonia. It stuck with you immediately. Jonah showed me around the main hall, the loading dock, and the various entryways to keep an eye on. He pointed out a few cameras, all the light sources, and where all the emergency buttons were in case of a fire or serious accident. We got the place pretty cheap because the ground rests on aquifer, he explained. That's been shifting slightly over the years, causing a sort of incline. We've looked into contractors to help us compensate, but it's a steep bill. Long story short, Henry, you need to check to make sure none of the chests tumble off the shelves. We don't want them to break. Not one. I appreciate that. Anything else I ought to know? He sat down on one of the desks, trying to look like a cool substitute teacher. I bet that move worked better on the younger folks. Well, 2 things, he admitted. 1, don't use the freezer. We've had to throw out a bunch of stuff because of it. And 2, do you know our motto? He gave me another firm clap on the shoulder. A couple of signed papers later, and I was officially hired. Jonah was always around, mostly in the office. I saw him try to get that stupid freezer to work a couple of times, but they gave up and started using it for storage. Mostly charity merch like hats and cheap jackets. The people who worked there struck me as harmless, but socially awkward. They would bring in the occasional plate of cookies, or wish me a blessed afternoon, but they would keep to themselves and give me a curious side-eye. Night shifts were a whole different thing. The little miracle chests look a bit strange in the dark. You have to consider, the one I used to have was beat up and torn at the edges. These things were fresh from the printer, they looked nothing like my old thing. It had been thrown out somewhere around my later high school years. It sounds sad, but I never knew it was. I loved that darkness. It was my own, and no one could take it from me. I'd whisper my little truths into the void, and I felt like it understood me. Like it was a friend. I could imagine it saying. That's when I noticed something peculiar. The industrial fans weren't really that loud. Barely even a hum. I asked Jonah about it, but he insisted I wear the headphones, or at least earplugs. It's an insurance thing, he argued. It's really important. Please take this seriously, Henry. None of them were tilted, or at an angle. They were all perfectly straight. I had the day's shift the following afternoon. There was a short moment before my lunch break where there was just me and Jonah in the office. He'd kicked his feet up on a chair and basked in the heat like a lizard. I'd only been with Little Miracles for a few weeks, but I'd already grown to enjoy the job. Asking questions about it felt shaky. Jonah looked up at me with a curious expression. I got a couple of questions about the warehouse, I said. A couple of things ain't adding up, and I need some clarity. Well, Henry, that's what the good book is for, he smiled. But I guess I could clear up some of the smaller stuff. And the shelves. You said the floor was crooked, and that the chests kept sliding. I checked the floor, and it ain't crooked. Shelves ain't either. Jonah got up from his chair and patted me on the shoulder. His frown softened into a trained, quiet, smile. He held his hand out, urging me to follow him into the warehouse. We wandered over to the closest chest, and Jonah gently placed it on the floor. He unwrapped the cellophane, talking to me as it came undone. The smell of the print unfurled like a carpet, spilling over my senses. The ammonia could have choked me, but it was the old lime smell that stuck around the longest. He closed the lid and wrapped the chest back up. Here's God's honest truth, he said. This entire organization is here to care for the good Lord's little miracles. And if we do what's expected of us, that's what we'll do. If there's anything else, you know where to find me, he said. Stick to the script and you'll do fine. For a full month, I didn't think much of it. That is, until one particular night. Thank you. I looked back at the chest. I stared at it, dumbfounded. There was no response. And of course there wasn't, how could there be? It might have been the wind, but a part of me knew it wasn't. That noise brought me back to those childhood summers, hidden away in the safety of my little miracle chest while my parents threw dinner plates and novelty mugs. In the safety of that chest, when I whispered something, I'd imagine someone listening. And that someone would sometimes whisper back. And what I heard in that warehouse was exactly like I'd imagined that voice to sound like. But I couldn't help it. During those long hours of the night, I had to look a little closer. Listen a little longer. And when I couldn't convince myself to stop, I tried to test them. Challenge them, even. I'd whisper at them, knock on the lid, or pick up and shake them a bit. Of course, nothing happened, but every now and then I'd see one of them twitch, or rattle. Was it one particular chest that moved, or was it all of them? Then, there it was. A nudge. Just a little, but clear as day. I rushed it, tore away the cellophane, and opened it. And of course, it was empty. And I'd accidentally ripped off part of the print. Just a corner, where the lion was. I thought about lying to Jonah, but I knew better. Not only did he deserve the truth, but there were cameras to tell the full story. Not that I didn't think he'd believe me, but because it didn't matter. No matter if the chest moved or not, I'd messed up. Then tell me what's going on, I begged. Tell me I'm not crazy. How about this, he said. You heard about the storm. It had been the talk of the week. A storm brewing over the weekend, with the brunt of it hitting later that evening. The sky had already darkened. Henry, please, he said, putting his hand on my shoulder. I'll see what I can do. Things were gonna be a bit different that evening. I was the only one on site, and there'd be no one to call for backup. That, and the storm was guaranteed trouble. We had to close the fans and lock down the shelves with plastic straps. And because the fans weren't running, I'd have to wear a mask with a gas filter, just in case the fumes got too intense. I was gonna have to make sure everything was secure, which would be an effort and a half. I checked the straps on the shelves with a flashlight, trying to figure out what had made them move. I noticed a particular chest on the mid-level that had slipped a bit, and I pushed it back in line. That was the one to keep an eye on. But as the second lightning strike collapsed into the woods outside, the shelves rattled again. And when thunder started to roll, I looked up. Some of them were actively fighting against the protective straps. Others seemed to shake, like a leaf in the wind. It's like something had kicked them, forced them into action. A couple of lids flipped up, revealing the empty insides. I could hear the cellophane stretch and strain against some unseen force pushing the chests every which way. Who's there? But one chest on the far end got loose. It collapsed to the floor and splintered on the concrete. It lay still. I let the lid go and backed away. We die, a chest whispered. Mother. Call for mother. Mother. I'm trying to help. I called out. I can help. Just please stop, and I'll help. The calls got louder. A chant for mother. For something to come help them, to deal with the death man. I couldn't stay. Defying the storm, I rushed out of the warehouse and into the parking lot. I was drenched in seconds as the rain fell sideways, but I much preferred the howling storm to whatever was happening on those shelves. I couldn't believe it. I ran for my car. I had to call Jonah. It had eyes. It wasn't oozing across the road, it was crawling like a massive reptile. I'd mistaken its scales for tree bark. It was a creature. An unreal reptilian thing, and it was coming straight at me. And now that I looked at it, it was fast. Mother, the chests cried. Mother comes. Mother saves. Mother eats the death man. Eat the death man. The air rippled, and the pressure made my ears pop long before I even heard its sound. It was part hiss, part croak, and part shriek, all wrapped into one furious bellow that rattled the windows. The storm spilled onto the warehouse floor. The winds shook the shelves as the creature stopped in front of the broken chest. A split white tongue tasted the air, each segment the size of a grown man's thighs. It poked around the splinters and looked up with a pupil the size of a bowling ball. Kill the death man, one demanded. I don't know what to do, I gasped. I don't know what to do. What is this? I gasped. What do I do? That's what I'm asking. I yelled back. What do I do? Think, Henry. Where are you safe? I blinked. My mind snapped to attention, and I looked around the room. And there, by the window, was the broken freezer. I climbed into it, hiding beneath a pile of merchandise while the storm raged outside. I could hear the wall give way to tooth and claw as a primal bellow rattled the confines of the freezer. I just lay there in the dark, clutching the phone like my childhood flashlight. I calmed my breathing, listening to Jonah's voice. Another bellow. Something bumped the freezer, making it wobble, but it didn't tip over. I'm sorry. I didn't think it'd be this bad. I just thought they'd get a little scared from the thunder, maybe show you something, but dash. It fell over. I heard massive lips smacking as something wet dragged across the freezer like sandpaper. She doesn't know you're a nurturing man, Jonah said. She's mourning. I thought about Jill. And with death staring me in the face, I knew the answer to the question Jonah had asked me on that first day. I was a nurturing man. I had been all along. And if I could get out of there in one piece, I'd show them. A white tongue slipped through the lid of the freezer, tasting the air. A waft of warm swamp breath swept over me as the creature snorted, looking for my scent. But that freezer smelled more like Jonah than me. Then it stepped back. It dragged itself across the floor, pulling half the office along in a sudden U-turn. Order slips and receipts stuck to its scales, whipping around in the wind. Debris from broken desks and flattened chairs clung to it, floating along like a natural disaster. I lay there, tucked among the battered merchandise, listening to the howling storm. The worst had passed, and the warehouse chests were quiet. I'm so proud of you, Jonah sighed. So proud of what you've become. And I would stay there until dawn, with Jonah, waiting for the wind to stop yelling. I need to know what this is, I said. All of this. He looked up at me, then back down at his yogurt. Mango flavor. So you send them out to children. You hide them in chests, and just, let them go. So that big thing was a wild one. Not wild one, he corrected. A poorly socialized one. Then what do the good ones look like? Jonah finished his yogurt, putting the little plastic spoon down. He wiped his lips and rubbed the tips of his fingers together, making a strange sound. His fingertips were solid, like sanded down bone. I looked at him. Past the horn-rimmed glasses and the calming smile. There was a tint to his eyes that I hadn't seen before, and a slight protrusion along his spine. It's not without purpose, Henry, he said. We're all just trying to be better people. He got up and stretched a little, then let his demeanor sink back into a familiar expression. See you Monday, he asked. For the cleanup? It's been a few years since. The first thing I did after that meeting was call Jill. It didn't take long for us to reconnect. She gave me every opportunity to back out, but I kept at it. And beyond all my insecurities, and questions, and worries, was a life of calm and warmth. One that I could nurture into something beautiful. A place with bedtime reading and early morning car karaoke. You might be surprised to know that I still work with little miracles. We got one of the chests at home. The creature that lived in it slipped out last summer, having grown too large to stay in the double-bottom floor. I don't consider these things a threat any more than I do a stray dog, or an outdoors cat. I get it now. I get how they work. And I don't have to wear any headphones at work, they don't mind me hearing the voices. Jonah has never said it out loud, but I think he and I both know where we first met. He's been with me for a long time, all the way back to when I read books by flashlight. Thanks to him, I guess someone listened to all those times when I whispered into the dark. It's a good reminder that God loves all his little miracles. And maybe we should too.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
A Perfect Woman, by that Eagle 5950. I smooth the bedspread on the, now cleaned, guest bedroom, and smile at the room, before closing the door behind me. Chase is coming in from the garage when I come downstairs. Boxes all put away, I ask. Yes, but we officially can never buy anything else ever again. He laughs, opening the fridge to grab a beer. Well, when we get our next house, I need more storage. The attic is too small, and I want a basement. We can turn it into your man cave too, I smile, wiggling my eyebrows. Chinese? I would love to learn how to make Mongolian beef at home to save money, but unfortunately you do not love me for my cooking skills, I tell him, looking into the fridge with a sigh. See? I can't possibly be your dream woman, I can't even cook, I whine, between giggles. He smooths my hair. More butterflies. Do you hear that? I ask. Chase responds, not looking up from his takeout container. It's a tapping sound. Is it coming from the dining room? I put my food down, and get up to walk that way. Then the tapping stops. I rush back into the room, and Chase is picking up his beer bottle off the floor. Did you figure out the tapping? He asks me, picking up our trash. Oh. No, I didn't, must have been a pipe, I respond, looking back towards the dining room. If you want, I can call the plumber to come out and check everything. Just to make sure it's not something important, he says, heading towards the kitchen. Later that night, after we had gone to bed, I wake up with a startle. I'm gasping, covered in sweat, and shakily looking for the switch to the lamp at my bedside table. The lamp flares to light. Chase isn't next to me. Chase, I say, a little louder. He must have wanted a midnight snack, he's probably downstairs. Chase, I call out at normal volume. I am just passing my doorway, heading towards the stairs, when I see Chase. Sweetie, hey. Are you okay? He asks quickly, taking my hands and looking at my face. Yeah, I'm good. Sorry, I went downstairs to watch TV and I must have dozed off. You calling my name woke me up and I thought you were hurt, so I ran upstairs to check on you. My adrenaline is through the roof right now, he laughs, but it doesn't meet his eyes. I playfully tease my finger on his shoulder. Oh, I would love to, but I'm all frazzled right now. How about I take a shower and we snuggle instead, he asks, wrapping me into a hug. But you were watching it last night, I thought. That's why you came downstairs, I say, and it comes out sharper than I intend. Oh, well yeah, I tried to come down to watch it. That's when I noticed it was broken, so I fell asleep. Sorry, I thought I mentioned that, he explains with that easy smile. I wave at his car leaving the driveway, and I turn and go back to the living room. It's softer tapping this time, but still steady. Tapping is back, we should call plumber tomorrow. I pull up rugs, looking for any pipe leaking. Tap. 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 To my shock, it moves pretty easily. It's Chase's ringtone. Hey, sorry, I know you're driving, I start. Oh, sweetie, you don't need to move anything around, you'll hurt yourself. Just go relax in a bath, I'll check it out tomorrow, he tells me. Okay, I tell him, I will. Okay, I love you. I'll call you when I'm on the way home, he tells me, and I can hear him putting the car in park. He must be at the restaurant. Why didn't he want me moving things? I'm not picking things up really. I'm just scooting. Tap. 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 I don't think it's a pipe. I put my ear up to the sliver of wall I cleared from moving the hutch and listen. Against Chase's wishes, I put my side against the hutch and move it the rest of the way. It moves easily, too easily. I lean down, and notice tiny furniture slides have been placed underneath it already. That's odd, I've never seen this thing move before. When I stand back up, the wall seems blank, the wood paneling uniform. I run my fingers along the panel, and lightly push. I jump back, and gasp. It's a door. The tapping continues, and it's louder. I'm shaking by this point. How did I not know there was a basement? All our neighbors had one, and I was so confused why we didn't. The light is shaking from my hands. It looks like a seemingly normal basement, just some old boxes. The tapping is coming from my right. I shine my light over there, and I see a door. I put my ear up to the door, and I hear the tapping mixed with soft music. I try the door, but it's locked. So I try the key hanging next to it. Warm light fills the basement as the door opens, and the music grows louder. I look around the room, and it is not what I expected. It looks like an apartment. There's a couch, a TV, a hallway leading to more rooms. Tap. 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 Darling. You're early. Dinner is almost ready, she sings, turning over her shoulder. She gasps when she sees me. She studies me. I'm in shock. She has an apron, her hair and makeup are done, and she's wearing heels. What is? I don't know what, I'm stammering. I can feel myself getting nauseous, and I'm trying to breathe. Something over my shoulder catches her attention and she sighs in relief. Darling. I'm so glad you're home, is this her? She seems confused, she says, putting the knife down. I slowly turn over my shoulder. And standing in the doorway, is Chase. Baby, I can explain, he takes a step towards me. A small boy runs up to Chase with his arms in the air. Chase picks him up, but his eyes haven't left me the whole time. She is just dreadful, walking into my home and yelling at me. I thought she would be nicer, she shakes her head at me in disapproval. You thought. What? I shriek. I can explain, please just try to listen, Chase says, putting the child down and walking to me. I'm going to be sick, I say out loud. Chase reaches for me. He smiles sadly, and I have my answer. You're disgusting, I seethe, and we are done. I push past him and head for the stairs. You're not even giving it a chance. I thought you were different, he whispers. I already have Liam, I don't need another. He wasn't planned, he tells me, following me. I really don't care anymore. You are sick, and disgusting, and I am leaving, I say, turning to face the door. From behind me, his voice changes. I'm sorry, in advance, he says. And then everything goes dark. Am I dreaming? I look up and realize where I am. I'm wearing heels, my hair feels curled, and I can feel lipstick on my lips. I stand, and run to the door I entered from the last time I was here. Are you okay? A tiny voice asks. I just stare at the boy, and shake my head slowly. No, thank you though, I answer. It's a pink flower. Thank you, I say hesitantly. Where is your mom? I ask him. He shrugs, and turns back to the TV. I turn around, and slowly step towards the kitchen. Soft music is playing from a radio next to her. When she hears me, she turns to me smiling. Oh good. You're awake. You can help me make the salad, she says, handing me a head of lettuce. What? What is going on? I ask her, looking around the room. I know this is hard, but trust me, it's easier to just do what he says, she tells me. What do you mean? I ask her. A forced smile. Chase and I used to fight a lot, he said it wasn't working. And it wasn't, he was right, but then I was pregnant. And it was. A wonderful surprise, she says, smiling at Liam engrossed in a kid's show about a boy with a magic flute. His cues? I ask. Like if I'm being too loud, he will stomp his foot or something as a warning. He gets upset if I don't listen, so you'll have to learn that, she says, turning back around. Oh no, not forever. Just until you're trained, she answers bluntly. Tap. 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 She's terrified. I hear the door begin to unlock. Quick, she says, clear the dishes for me off the counter. The door opens. Honeys, I'm home, Chase's booming voice calls. I'm still standing by the counter, when he approaches me, ruffling Liam's hair along the way. I see Julia over his shoulder have a panicked look on her face. And I don't know why, but I want to protect her. We are great, Julia and I are fast friends, and she is a whiz in the kitchen. Would you like your salad now? I smile. His eyes sparkle in happiness. I will save them both. I will save all of us.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
An immediate threat. It didn't seem like it, I thought as my phone started buzzing with the same tone. One by one, everyone else's phones started ringing. I should explain, I guess, that I have never experienced a severe weather warning for real. Not once in my life. I suppose it should come as no surprise, seeing as I live in Oregon of all places. I supposed maybe it was just a mistake, but just as the thought floated across my mind, I heard the siren. Except for one teenage girl. A thin, short-haired girl wearing what looked like a pillowcase walked unsteadily down the street, very slowly, looking as though she was having some difficulty. I turned around, now extremely confused and worried, and got the dog's food bowls, which I had forgotten earlier. When I looked up, one of the houses, the one diagonally across from mine, right next to the house across the street and to the left, had its lights on and one of its windows broken. I shuddered and rushed back into the basement as the lights flickered intensely. Dash, could you give me the status of, withheld, county? Over. Dash, no new developments. Over. Dash, okay. Any fatalities? Over. What part of no new developments do you not understand, McClellan? A squad car will be passing through soon to scan the area for the target. Over. Any ETA on that? Over. No, not yet. Over. And any word from HQ, Jones? Over. No, McClellan. Not yet. Not since 013 first got out. Over. Well, let me know if and when they contact you. Over. Edit. Whoa, guys, this has blown up. I'll be sure to keep you posted over the next few days. Update. Just a quick update before the first major update. About 5 minutes ago, a car alarm went off somewhere to the right of my house. I'm too freaked out to go check it out, but I'll go up and see how it looks tomorrow morning, and I'll update you then.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back out now. Next story's already watching.
I think I may have found an actual book of Satan, by Hot Particular 8912. For starters, I'm not talking about the Satanic Bible or anything written by humans. I'm a goth atheist and in the past even experimented in Levian Satanism. I met a girl about 2 weeks ago. She was pretty, messy dark hair, pale skin, makeup, goth like me, and had a punk look to her. She introduced herself as Kaya and we had met at my job. We hit it off quickly and agreed to go on a date. Everything went well, but after being intimate for the first time, Kaya confessed she just wanted a more friends with benefits style relationship, which I accepted despite some disappointment as I liked her. Kaya was a little odd at times. She would respond immediately to texts or not for hours. She didn't like eating in public and seemed to always want to do something that would stir up drama. Of course, these things are pretty normal and I just thought she was kinda quirky, but I then realized a few things about Kaya. I had never seen her eat outside of snacks. Her tattoos always seemed slightly off, as in they seemed different each time, and would always avoid people in public. It was disturbing, but it was conceivable that she was just antisocial and had an eating disorder or something. I called her a couple times but she never answered, and I was about to call the cops when texted me this. Which is when I saw that the grave's name was Kaya Smith, born 1876, died 1912. Which is when the second baby crow fell to its death.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
He stepped back and released a wide, toothless smile. He looked sick. His skin was gray and his lips were black. He extended his hand and said, "Let's hang out." No emotion, just the bare words, like Google Translate except high-pitched and excited, a happy cartoon character. "Not right now, Mikey," I said. I hesitated, then closed and locked the door. Around 5:30 a.m. Monday morning, there was another knock. "You gotta be fucking kidding me." He held both hands out, palms up as if presenting treasure. Atop them was the most beautiful pastry I've ever seen. It was fluffy like a cloud, but browned and crispy. It was drizzled with chocolate, peanut butter, and caramel. I reached for it and was bombarded with memories as I took the beauty into my hand. I was at Mikey's house. I was sitting at a wooden kitchen table as he frosted a beautiful cupcake decorated to look like a rose. My mouth watered as he delivered it to me like a present. I sunk my teeth into it and sighed with relief. He was my best friend. I'd known him since childhood. I wanted to give him a hug. But at the same time my heart was rising in my throat, threatening to choke me as I had the feeling of people watching me from every angle. "Let's hang out," Mikey said, reaching for me. I drove home. I wasn't 2 steps out of my car when he approached me. I tried to turn away, but then my life was sunshine and rainbows. I couldn't help but smile. Without bending his back, he leaned his face down to mine. We locked eyes. I can't remember what they looked like, but I remember what they made me feel, what they made me remember. I was a toddler on a swing set. I was smiling and laughing. Behind me, the tall man, Mikey, was the one smiling as he pushed me again and again. Then it was my birthday. I watched as Mikey lit my candles. He sparked the lighter with his gray hands, his yellow nails longer than his fingers. And then I was following him, because he was my everything. He was every good thing I could remember. But no. I didn't know him. I imagined walking into his apartment. I smiled, then screamed. I wanted to run away, but I'd miss him so much. I watched from my bedroom window as the officer pulled up. I took a peek through my peephole and saw that Mikey was still there. I sat next to the door and waited. Let's hang out. Of course, man. I really can't thank you enough for last time. Then, I heard screams. Right now, I'm certain he's dangerous. But what will I think if I see him again? What will I say when he asks me to hang out? What will I remember? What will I do?
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
I found a doll in my dad's closet, by Teeny George. It was a doll. This was completely out of character for my dad. He was a smart, church-going man that believed treating everyone with dignity and empathy is the best way to live. He would never touch a Ouija board, let alone a voodoo doll. He didn't even watch movies that contained supernatural beings. He claims, "We have no idea if demons are real, and I don't want to even think about ghosts." I didn't want to think about it. I had a game in 30 minutes. I planned on asking Dad about it after the game. I grabbed the little doll and put it under my pillow while I went to finish getting ready. On the ride home, Dad tried to comfort me. "It's okay, bud, we've all had these kinds of days. You did nothing wrong. Let's get you home and take some pain medication and sleep it off." I searched my whole room for the best spot to hide it and decided on putting it in my vent in the ceiling. I grabbed my pocket knife from my desk, stood up on the top of my bed, unscrewed one side of the vent and shoved the doll in. My headache was finally getting to where I could see again, and I turned my lights off before getting in bed. The vent was right above my bed and the low reflection from the light of the hallway shone dully on two button eyes through the slits of the vent. He was looking at me. I shook my head. No, I got another headache. I don't know what's wrong with me. This barely ever happens. Part 1. Edit. Part 2 and 3 will be posted in r/creepcast.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite serves. Hope you're hungry.
The heat and walking was getting too much for me the last few years, so I asked to be transferred somewhere with AC, and the company moved me to one of their resorts. While the working conditions were 110 and number 37, better as far as climate and comfort go, the guest issues were trickier / mainly domestics. I guess the expensive and stress of vacation got to a lot of people, and I'd be called by neighboring rooms because some mom and dad were yelling at each other. I'd try to suggest they take a nap or go do separate activities for a bit, and that would usually calm them down. Next, I saw that they had bought a dining plan. This is when a guest prepays for all of their food. They're given a certain number of credits to use for meals. This family had only used 3 credits, and the last one was 2 days after they checked in. It appeared that the day they arrived, they got here late and probably just stayed on the resort. The next day they used 2 credits at Epcot. The second park day they used just 1 credit at Magic Kingdom, and it was at breakfast time. Now at Disney we have something called Magic Bands. Magic Bands are worn by the guests and act as a room key, park ticket, credit card, dining reservation payment, FastPass, a system used to bypass lines, and more. It took some work, but I was finally able to look up this family's FastPass history. The day they went to Magic Kingdom, they had breakfast at a restaurant in the park, rode a couple of rides, and then rode their last ride, It's a Small World around 11 a.m. Then nothing. Finally, it was time to bring in someone else on this. I called an old co-worker at Magic Kingdom and asked him to pull security footage for It's a Small World at the time they wrote it, and I made my way over there. When I got there, my friend was very confused, almost distraught, looking. He showed me what he found. There's usually a camera in the direction of where rides load and unload. The footage showed them scanning their bands to use fast passes for the ride and boarding the ride. The footage from the exit of the ride just showed the other people in their car exiting. They weren't there.
You're still tuned to HorrorSlop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
My husband insists on keeping this one painting of a woman, by Robert Mort. Namely, my husband insisted on keeping this weird painting of a woman. Who is she? I'd asked when I first saw it, leaned against a mountain of moving boxes. It was an original painting. Oil, I think, judging by the way the light reflected off the brushstrokes. It depicted a young woman standing in a dark room, looking over her shoulder at the viewer. She was actually rather beautiful. Blonde hair falling over her shoulders like a waterfall. A white cotton dress. A dainty, heart-shaped face that was somehow haunting rather than cute. Especially because my husband insisted on hanging it above our bed. Okay, but they're small. This painting is enormous. For Pete's sake, the woman is nearly life-sized. It seemed like a big deal to him, so I dropped it. But it wasn't easy. Sometimes I woke up in the middle of the night with the horrible feeling that I was being watched. Then I'd look up and see her haunting gray eyes staring down at me. And there was the one time I swear she moved. Was her hand always like that? I asked Eric, after getting into bed one night. Her left hand. The fingers are kind of open, reaching out behind her. Like she's waiting for someone to grab her hand. I could have sworn she wasn't always like that. Then again, I generally avoided looking at the painting. It was so uncomfortably realistic. When I stared into those gray eyes, I almost felt like I was making eye contact with a person. I lasted 2 weeks. Then I begged Eric to move it. It's the nicest piece of art we have. It belongs above the bed. What about the sunflower one? He heaved a long sigh. Fine. I'll move her. That was another thing. He often referred to the painting as her. It was weird. For some reason I couldn't sleep. After tossing and turning for an hour, I decided to grab a snack downstairs. I got to the top of the stairs, and there she was. I hadn't turned on the main lights, only the nightlight in the hall bathroom was on. With everything so dark, the background of the painting melted into the shadows. But the woman still stood out, with her pale face and white dress. And my stupid, sleepy brain interpreted it as an actual person standing there. I jumped about a foot in the air. And I would have fallen all the way down the stairs, had I not caught the banister at the last second. Can we please get rid of that painting? I asked the next morning. Eric turned away from the stove, set the spatula down. Why? He looked at me. Then he broke into laughter. And, after a few seconds, I started laughing too. It was pretty stupid, now that I thought about it. I know I was sleepy, but still, I thought the painting was a person. What, did I think we were being burglarized by a young, beautiful, blonde woman in a nightdress? And for a while after that, things were okay. I sort of noticed Eric spending more time in his office than usual, but he also had a big deadline for a brief coming up. And how would that be related to the painting, anyway? It's not like he was staring at her for hours on end. One night he didn't come downstairs to eat dinner with me. I called up to him a few times. No reply. So I went upstairs and walked into his office, to find him staring at her. No, I knew it was due on Wednesday. Well, my wife fell down the stairs. I had to take her to the hospital. Why are you lying about me falling down the stairs? The brief you told me you finished 2 days ago. You're jealous of her. Then I finally found the words. Are you saying, this is a painting of someone you know? Who is this a painting of, Eric? ////. I know, it sounds silly, being so worked up over a painting. But you have to admit it was weird. He was obsessed with this thing, for whatever reason. Why didn't I see the painting when we were dating? Did he hide it away in the basement? That was the one place I'd never been. Had he built a little shrine down there, painting, candles, the whole 9 yards? He knew her. And then I got the craziest idea. I sat up in bed. Slowly, quietly. Turned to Eric. He was fast asleep. Then I slipped out from underneath the covers, grabbed my phone from the nightstand, and tiptoed out of the room. The office was cold, much colder than our bedroom. Goosebumps pricked up my bare arms. But I didn't waste any time. I reached over, fumbling across the wall, and hit the switch. The light flicked on. The blonde woman stared down at me from the wall. Her eyes seemed to follow me as I took Eric's leather chair and dragged it across the hardwood. Once against the wall, I stepped up onto it. It took a few minutes for me to find the right website and upload the photo. But when the results loaded, I gasped. I expected maybe one result, if I were lucky. Some sort of facial recognition that would match the painted face to a photo. Or, maybe the artist's website would come up, and mention who the subject was. But instead, dozens of thumbnails filled the page. Of the exact same painting I'd been staring at for weeks. My heart dropped. Little black dots danced in my vision. I collapsed into the chair behind me, trembling, and began to read. Her backpack was found roughly a mile from where the sighting occurred, but no trace of Anya was found. I clicked on the next article, and the next, but they all said the same thing. Hike, bear, disappearance. All of them showed a photo along with her self-portrait. She looked strikingly identical to her painted likeness. None of them mentioned the boyfriend's name, but it had to be Eric. The most recent article, from 5 years ago, was a video clip of her parents begging for her search to continue. Sadly, judging by the news articles, it never did. I don't know how long I sat there. All I know is that I was suddenly jolted from my thoughts by a loud thump in the hallway. Footsteps. Coming towards the office. I ducked under the desk just as he stepped into the room. Tara. But maybe it's fine. Maybe the bear got Anya, maybe Eric had nothing to do with it. Isn't that more likely than Eric being a murderer? I looked up, and screamed. I was looking for a pen, I stuttered, lamely. I wanted to write down. I remembered I have to pick up groceries tomorrow and I needed to add something. He tilted his head, a small smile on his lips. I don't think that's the truth, Tara. I was jealous, I continued, desperately, but now I understand. I wish you'd just told me. To lose someone like that, of course you'd want to keep the painting. It's all you have left of her. But I also saw what had made the noise. It was over. But sometimes, I think Anya was watching over me. That her self-portrait carried a piece of her. And that night, she'd protected me from falling victim to the monster who ended her life.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
No one else would help my grandma. I wish I hadn't, by Splatter Scribe. I came back to Coal Creek, West Virginia because no one else would. Someone to make sure the stove got turned off. Someone to stop her from wandering barefoot into the woods at night. I wasn't the best person for it. Just the last one still breathing who hadn't blocked her number. So I packed a duffel, left a note for my boss, and drove east through the hills until the cell signal dropped and the trees got tall enough to blot out the sky. She was in the recliner. Same one Grandpa used to fall asleep in with a beer on his chest. Blanket over her lap. Ashtray full of loose screws beside her. TV off, just reflecting the window behind me in that gray, dead glass. Hey, Grandma, it's me. You probably don't remember I was coming. That's okay. I brought your pills and some groceries, figured I'd stay a few days. Then, without turning. She didn't answer. I was halfway through putting cans in the cupboard when I heard her voice again, low and quiet. I slept in the back room. Used to be my dad's when he was a kid. Twin mattress on a metal frame. Same thin yellow sheets with faded cowboy prints. Same dresser with the broken top drawer that always slid open a few inches on its own. The air back there felt wrong. Heavy. Like it didn't want to move unless you gave it permission. It stopped after a while. I guess she fell asleep. I tried to do the same. The dreams were strange. Pressure and heat, like something heavy was sitting on my chest. The sound of water running behind the walls. A breath that wasn't mine, brushing close to my ear. I woke up with my heart hammering. I know I closed it. For a second, I thought I saw something, a shape in the hallway. Short. Slouched. Leaning forward like it was listening. I sat up. Grandma. The shape shifted, stepped into the low light spilling in through the living room window. It was her. Thin housecoat. Eyes wide and glassy. Arms limp at her sides. Just standing there, staring in at me like she didn't know who I was. I got up slow, eased toward her. She was quiet most of the afternoon. Sat in the recliner watching static again. TV off, remote untouched. Just staring at the glass. I heard snipping. Quick. Rhythmic. Sharp little metallic bites. I pushed the door open slow. She was sitting on the toilet lid, hunched over her lap. One hand holding a tissue. The other, nail clippers. Her foot was up on a stool. Bare. Shaking. She wasn't trimming. She was cutting. All the way down. Past the white. Past the pink. Into the bed. Grandma, stop, you're gonna hurt yourself. She didn't look up. She was different the next day. Quieter. But twitchy. Kept folding and unfolding a dish rag with her thumbs like she didn't know where she was. Her teeth clicked. She wouldn't eat. I offered soup, crackers, a protein shake. She wouldn't touch any of it. Just stared at the window over the sink and said, "Grandma, what? Why'd you put your hair up like that for? You know how he gets." I helped her back to bed. She went easy. Didn't fight or mutter. Just let me tuck her in and stared at the ceiling like it was showing her something I couldn't see. She was out cold by 10. I couldn't sleep. But the living room. The recliner was rocking. Just slowly. A soft, steady cree, cree, cree. Like a kid pushing themselves in time with a lullaby. I stared too long. Didn't move. There was something on the cushion. The rocking stopped the second I picked it up. No wind. No movement. Just the TV flickering blue in the corner. Still unplugged. She was humming again. Same tune as before. Something slow. Maybe a church thing. Or maybe just something she made up. She scooped a spoonful of oatmeal and brought it to her lips like nothing was wrong. Chewed. Swallowed. Looked at me, finally. I hadn't. Didn't even know it had a lock. Then went back to humming. No wind. No bugs. Just the hum of the fridge and the slow groan of something settling on the back deck. I cracked the curtain open. Grandma was out there. Barefoot. Nightgown hanging loose off one shoulder. Standing still in the dark like she'd been poured into it. In her hands were the shears. Not kitchen scissors. Not hedge trimmers. The old iron kind. The farm kind. Rust like dried blood flaked down the handles. Blades long enough to snip a chicken's head off clean. She was humming again. No screams. No fall. Just, gone. I found her in bed, curled into the blanket like a child. One hand tucked under her chin. Mouth slack. Eyes open. There wasn't a service. The county buried her next to Grandpa at the edge of Coal Creek Cemetery, no headstone, just a brass tag in a mound of disturbed dirt. No one else came. 3 days of dust, mildew, and silence thick enough to chew. Moth-eaten dresses. Expired pills. Jars of paperclips sorted by size. Granny's mind had left long before her body did. Inside were photos. Stacks of them. They weren't family photos. Kneeling. Bound. Dressed in clothes that looked local. Coal Creek diner uniforms, Sunday dresses, feed store overalls. And in every third or fourth picture, Grandma. She posed in the rocker like she wanted the photo to seduce someone, legs open, lace clinging to her hips, a severed head nestled where a lover's face might go. One stocking was rolled down. Her panties were bunched around one ankle like she peeled them off slow. If the head wasn't there, I swear to God. That's when I noticed the background. Behind the chair, the shape of a window. A wooden wall. A hanging tool. Not just any shed. Her shed. The one behind the house. The one with a padlock so rusted it looked fossilized. The padlock came off with one tug. I don't think she even locked it. The door groaned on the hinge like something breathing shallow. The shed wasn't big, maybe 10 by 10, but it felt deeper than it should have been. Like there was weight in the air. Something that wanted to be left alone. I stepped inside. And then the jars. Just murk. A fog of rot. I turned to the workbench. There was a wooden box with an old 8mm film reel inside, labeled in pen, for later. Beside it, a roll of leather straps, stained dark. A pair of rusted shears. A folded apron, stiff with dried blood. Not splatter. Not a stain. Soaked. Front to back. Like someone wore it while butchering something that screamed. I couldn't breathe. There were scratch marks on the inside of the door. Fingernail deep. Like someone tried to claw their way out. A creak. From the rocking chair. The hallway stretched long and still. Smelling like dust and boiled potatoes and the faint copper whiff that clings to old women's hair. The rocking chair was moving. Back and forth. Back and forth. Slow and even. No wind. No draft. Just motion. There was no one in it. And then. You found my things, didn't you? I couldn't speak. S'pose you know now. The chair kept rocking. 1, 2, 3. The house went still. But when I pass that room, it feels like she's grinning at me.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse, in the best way.
Samantha told me about it on our third date. We were watching a movie on her couch when I made my move to kiss her. She whipped her hand in front of my face and blocked me. I braced myself. Here it comes. I'm not ready for a relationship. Nothing to do with you, of course. It was the absolute last thing that I wanted to hear, because I was already crazy about her. I have a removable face. Is that, like, a metaphor or something? No. My face is literally removable. Look. Closely. She lifted her chin and traced her jaw line with a finger. You can see the seam. After admiring how beautiful her neck was for a dizzying moment, I leaned in for an inspection. It was very hard to see, but it did look like there was a slightly unnatural transition there from her face to her throat. I grew dizzier, as a dozen questions rushed into my brain. Don't bother asking why or how or anything like that, said Samantha. I can't tell you that. If that's going to be a problem, you should leave now. I'm letting you know this because I like you, and I want to take the next step, but this is non-negotiable. There's something else. Once a day, usually in the evening, I have to remove the face and disinfect the inside of it. If I don't, it will rot. This takes about an hour, give or take, depending on how my day went. During this time, you must never ever look at my real face. Never. Do you understand? Why, yes. Got it. Don't ask about it, don't look at your real face. I paced around the living room, running my hand through my hair. I liked Samantha, a lot. She was smart, and funny, and beautiful. But was that beauty real? Did it count? Did it matter if it was real or not? Was I being superficial even worrying about it? But every night was the same. Samantha would close herself in the bathroom, sometimes for an hour, sometimes for 2, and clean the inside of her face. The curiosity never left me. I would sit there and wonder what was under that face. I came so close to barging in on her a few times, but I never did. I never told anybody about Samantha's removable face. It's not that she asked me not to. I just didn't think it was anybody's business. Chris was my best friend, as close to a brother as I'd known. We'd grown up together, and visited each other at college often, and spent the summers together. After college, we'd moved to different cities, but we stayed in close contact. Standing there on the cliffs, I told Chris about Samantha's removable face. At first, he thought I was joking. Then he had 1,000 questions, most of which I couldn't answer. I don't know, man. I don't know. I sighed. Yeah, it drives me crazy. I've asked her 1,000,000 times. But she told me I could never look. Gotta respect that, man, even if I don't like it. That's love. It happened on Saturday evening. We were lounging lazily in the backyard, deep into the beer, having just finished with some grilled steaks, when I got a text from work. God damn it, I groaned. I have to make a work call. My biggest client, baby. Sorry. Chris smiled. I'll be fine. Got my beer, got some weeds to pull in your garden. God knows your lazy-ass husband isn't going to do it. Those tomatoes are choking to death. It's a tragedy. I rolled my eyes and went into the side yard to make my call. I dropped the phone and ran into the house and down the hall to our bedroom. Through the open door, I could see that the door to the master bathroom was also standing open. Don't come in, screamed Samantha. I don't have my face on. Call an ambulance. He looked. Oh God, he looked. She sounded desperate, and truly horrified. That made me desperate and horrified, and I wanted to rush into the bathroom, but I knew suddenly that that would be a mistake. I knew suddenly that Samantha didn't want me to look at her real face, not out of a sense of vanity, but for my own safety. Chris staggered backwards, out of the bathroom. He was holding a straightened-out paperclip, which he had used to pick the privacy lock. Now he was stabbing it again and again into his eyes, shouting gibberish. He was clearly in the depths of madness, and it turned my stomach to see him mutilate himself. Call a fucking ambulance, my wife screamed. Don't come in here. He fucking looked. My best friend is in a psychiatric hospital under suicide watch. He's completely blind and mostly catatonic, except when he slips into a violent, babbling mania. The doctors are optimistic that his state is temporary, but they don't know the truth about what caused it, because I told the paramedics that Chris had taken a large dose of psychedelic mushrooms and fallen into psychosis. I saw no good reason to tell the truth about what had happened. Who would believe that one look at my wife's real face would make somebody insane? At best, we would be the subjects of a long investigation. At worst, we would have to prove that what we were saying was true, by showing somebody Samantha's face. Then the same thing would happen again, and what after that? I had no idea, and no interest in finding out. For Samantha's part, I knew that she would never consent to show anybody her real face, no matter what the consequences of refusal were. Not on me. That one look at my fucking face makes people insane. Please. I just need some time alone.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
I care for an old woman with dementia who thinks her dead husband is still alive. I'm starting to believe her, by the Whitemare. It was my stepfather who wanted me to get a job. Even part-time, he said, was better than rotting away in my room. I would have been perfectly happy spending my last summer before I turned 18 doing just that, but unfortunately, it wasn't an option. On this particular day, I stood by the cramped entrance to our small town's one supermarket, gazing up at the "Employees Wanted" posters stapled to the bulletin board. Glancing over at the dead-eyed workers slouched behind the tills across from me, I decided against retail. Scanning the notices, I eventually found an offer that piqued my interest. I pushed open the old iron gate, which grinded like stiff cogs. Squeezing between the narrow gap, I began to stroll up the poorly paved path that led to Agatha's house. Her lawn was a jungle of weeds and discarded furniture. The walk to her pastel blue door felt endless, but finally I knocked. Taking into account her poor hearing, I rang the bell too. I heard a muffled voice from inside, assumedly saying, "I'm coming," and before long, the door swung open. A decrepitly old woman greeted me, and I responded back with a simple, "Hi, I'm Norman." She took my hand in hers and led me inside. Agatha's home smelled like dust and sherry. Her decor triggered long dormant memories of visiting my own late grandparents. As soon as the door closed, she was offering everything from sweet milk to shortbread, and guided me to her equally ancient sofa in the front room. Agatha's eyes held pure kindness, devoid of any malice. She looked at me like a beloved son. Midway through our first talk, it struck me that she might truly believe I was. The thought nearly brought tears, but I kept smiling. She spent half an hour asking about school and if I had a girlfriend. I chatted easily, knowing keeping her company was my job. When I finally asked about her, she seemed surprised but answered anyway. "She only ever talks about what I should and shouldn't do. Take these pills, don't go outside. Pardon my language, dear, but she treats me like a damn child." With that, Agatha looks down and sighs. Then her paper-thin lips turn up into a smile and she looks at me again. It was like a mini-museum, with every surface covered in more dusty knick-knacks than I could count. There were porcelain figurines, old photographs, crystal bijoux, jars of marbles, an urn, stuffed animals, taxidermied animals, everything. Most intriguingly, an odd white hood in a glass box. I stood up and took one of the pictures from the mantel. A long-dead soldier looked out from the frame. I wondered if this was Strauss, her late husband who she mentioned in passing. I heard the friction between her slippers and the gray-blue carpet as Agatha steplessly walked back into the living room. She sat with her mug of English tea and a handful of cookies. I returned to the space next to her and showed her the portrait. "Who's this?" I asked her, both genuinely curious and trying to make conversation. "That's Zoran," she exclaimed. "He's my Strauss older brother. That would have been him in the Second World War. My Strauss came to America when he was a boy, just after the start of that horrible war. Only he and his mother made it, and she died of the consumption not long afterwards. My family took him in and taught him English. He worked and lived on our farm for the rest of his childhood and some into his adulthood. Well, I was wet behind the ears back then, I don't mind admitting it, but I still knew what love was. I loved Strauss, but my father wouldn't have it. To him, he was just like any other farm animal, I suppose. Even if he didn't think that exactly, he still made him sleep out in the barn like he was. I got comfortable in my seat and waited silently for what I expected to be something of a life story. We eloped in 1949. Stealing is a sin, and you should do right to remember that, but we had to take money from my father. We had no choice. We took that money, and used it to make something of a new life for ourselves once we got up north. We came across this town that you live in today. Back then, it had doubled in size in just 4 years. They wouldn't notice us two slipping in. She suddenly drew in a deep, rasping breath. The reason for the growth was the new factory. It was built by the government in 1945 to manufacture all the new lotions and potions they came up with during the war. Well, it had endless jobs going for it and my Strauss took one of them. We settled down then and tried to start a family. It was all going dandy until 1954. I expected Agatha to continue after her long pause, but she didn't. She just wordlessly stared at the white cloth mask in the glass cabinet. I leaned in and put what I hoped was a soothing hand over hers. Most of the young men and boys died, so I should count myself lucky that my Strauss survived. And I do, of course, but I was never sure if he did. You see, he wasn't the same after it. His spirit never changed, oh no, but he was so badly burnt. It was a chemical fire that did it. The bigwigs tried to blame the workers themselves for it, you know that? I'm surprised you don't know. What are they teaching in these schools nowadays anyway? Nobody gives a hoot about local history. She mumbled out a few more of her qualms with the US education system before I subtly reminded her that she'd been telling me about her late husband. Say, what high school do you go to? She said as she turned to face me again. I told her and she smiled as she realized that it was the same school Strauss worked at for nearly 30 years. We sat again, and she told me of how he died at only 61. It was an aggressive form of lymphoma. The sadness in Agatha's eyes as she told me was heartbreaking. It was like she'd only heard the news of her husband's passing moments before. I put a comforting hand on her shoulder as she slipped into melancholy. As I did, I gleaned the time from my watch and realized I'd been here half an hour longer than I was supposed to be. I liked that first day with her, don't get me wrong, but when I realized the time I got up to leave. I'll be back same time next week. I'll see you then. I replied, trying not to feel like a heartless monster. Yugoslavia, she said, seemingly at random. Zoran, during the war, he was a partisan. I realized she was talking about her brother-in-law I asked about earlier and smiled my response. I waved at her, walking down her winding driveway, a gallery of garbage among the weeds either side of me. I got the bus back just in time for dinner. How'd it go with the crone? My dad asked as he chewed on the fried leg of some dead bird. She didn't, no. She was telling me about her husband Strauss for most of it. Strauss? My father repeated as he looked at me for the first time in the conversation. As in Scarface Strauss? He was the groundskeeper at your high school all the way back when I went there. He used to terrify the kids. God, whenever he caught someone playing around in his freshly racked pile of leaves, he'd pull his mask up and glare at them. It'd always send them running back to class. Hello dear. You must be Edward's son. Come in, come in. She mumbled and led me inside. When was the last time you visited, huh? Christmas '87. The house has changed so much since then, let me give you a tour. Agatha, I began, I'm Norman. I'm here to keep you company, remember? I was here last week. This is the guest bedroom, where you'll be staying, suggested Agatha and waves a frail hand towards a dull wooden door to our left. I opened my mouth to correct her, but bit my tongue. That goes up to the attic. There's nothing but asbestos up there, so don't you think about going up. Now, let me put on some tea. With that, she began to shuffle over the sickly green carpet, across the snubbed corridor and down the stairs. Looking back at some of the more interesting antiques, I followed her. I wasn't even halfway down the staircase when I heard it. I stopped, I listened closely. I could have sworn I heard a quiet bang. I listened out for it for some time, until finally Agatha called my name, my real name, and I hurried down into the lounge. When I came into Agatha's house that third week, something felt different. Off. It wasn't just because I'd cycled there, and my legs were burning. The atmosphere in the house was different. I called out her name, and her carer came down the stairs. She greeted me with a deflated smile and told me that Agatha had taken a turn for the worse. She was in bed in her room, and I went up to her while her carer attempted to fix her lunch in the cramped kitchen. I made my way down the garishly carpeted floor and to her room, where the door had been left open a crack. I pushed in, and saw Agatha lying weakly on a bed. I nearly grimaced at her delusion, but hid my reaction for her sake. "That's nice," I said. She shook my hand, which was clasped between hers, vigorously. She looked so happy. "He's in his bedroom down the hall, you should pop in and introduce yourself," Agatha said suddenly after a minute of uneasy silence. Before I could respond, her carer, who I never got the name of, walked into the room. She was carrying a steaming mug of something hot and sat on the other side of the bed. "Here you go, love," Agatha's carer said, setting the cup of tea down. She spoke with a British accent, which explained her affinity for tea making. "I think what you're doing is great," she said, "but Agatha's an ill woman. You should go home, leave her be for a while." That week was the best of the summer. Layla was once again unemployed, and we spent the entire week together. Just before we parted on Friday evening, she asked me if I was free again on Saturday. I paused and thought her question over. Eventually I said, "Want to come with me?" That Saturday, we walked up the path leading to Agatha's house together. When she answered the door, I noticed she looked pale. That unhealthy complexion glossed over when she saw Layla, however. In a strange way, it was comforting to see Agatha genuinely not recognize someone she didn't know. We came in and talked for a bit, before I decided today was a good opportunity to work on the lawn. Agatha agreed, and Layla kept her company while I headed out. Before I did, the old woman shuffled into her kitchen, rummaged around for a while before coming back with a rusty iron key. I was met with the stench of death. I instantly recoiled, burying my nose in my elbow. It was a raccoon carcass that reminded me of a ketchup packet that had been stamped on. I grabbed a cobweb-covered shovel, scooped up the remains, and dumped them past an old picket fence. After a quick sign of the cross, I hauled a heavy manual lawn mower to the front yard. Clearing the scattered junk, mostly bits of washing machines, car parts and dishwashers, felt like disturbing an archaeological site. I stacked what I could on the paved path, wondering how long it had all been rusting there. "You missed a patch," she said teasingly. I smiled, glad they were bonding. I never had a grandmother. One died before I was born. The other when I was an infant. I felt Agatha starting to fill that role for me, in a sense. I made an unspoken obligation to continue my visits to her after the summer ended. Layla disappeared back inside, and I continued my moil for another hour or so. When I finished, I put the useless mower back in the shed before heading into the house where I was greeted with a cool iced tea. I spoke with Agatha for a bit, explaining to her the world I did and what I'll do the next time I come, until Layla said it was time to go. We both got up and began our walk to the nearest bus stop, waving at the old lady as we walked down the path. Which, I may add, was no longer infiltrated with weeds. Most of it, anyway. "So what do you think of her?" I asked again as we approached the bus stop, fishing for a more honest answer. "Strauss seems interesting," Layla said as we took our seats in the cramped, glass enclosure next to the stop sign. "Yeah," I exhaled, "she's old, I guess. It's Alzheimer's." "Oh, right. I thought it was something like that." "It is," Layla said glumly. There was a pause. The street lamps began to flicker on as the sun went to sleep. Then she spoke again. I let out a chuckle, which comes to an abrupt end halfway through. There was a moment or two of silence. Layla sighed. I froze, as a sudden painful realization crept over me. Agatha had told me her husband came home, and now this? In that moment, I knew what was happening. A relative of Agatha's had come to stay, and in her unending confusion she convinced herself that it was her husband. This theory terrified me, as I'd always assumed that the last ounce of clarity the old woman would keep would be over her husband. Her lover. The man she was married to for almost 50 years. I felt sick, imagining the cherished memories she made with Strauss over her lifetime crumbling to dust in her mind. Yeah, and no, I didn't see her, Layla said. Agatha told me she hadn't been around in days. Like, a week almost. What the hell? I barked. I sat back in the uncomfortable bench inside of the bus shelter, complete with the latest in anti-homeless technology. The sloped metal bar digging into my haunches worsened my mood. They can't just leave her on her own like that. I continued, she needs constant care. Just a week ago she was bedridden. Layla watched me as I grew furious and stood up. I'm coming, okay? Besides, it's not like I have a curfew, she rebutted, and that was that. We both began the walk back to Agatha's house. In the late evening of the summer months, the world turns blue. It was this blue world that Layla and I crept through to return to the old lady's house. The walk back went quicker than we thought, and we were soon met with the familiar iron gate. I pushed it open with a long, drawn-out creak and began the trek up the walkway to the old and venerable abode. I felt an uneasy cloud waft around us as we drew closer to her home. It reached a boiling point as we both sensed something bounding towards us from amongst the remaining tall grass. It was the German Shepherd. Moments before Layla and I both suffered from a shared heart attack, the dog revealed itself and trotted between us, begging for scratches and belly rubs. I let out a tentative exhale and patted the mutt just behind the ears as it unfurled its tongue. Layla mentioned something about the mortality rate of rabies and I quickly recoiled my hand. The dog followed us the rest of the way to Agatha's front door, staying a short distance behind us. I knocked on the door, and, as I assumed, received no answer. It was getting dark now, and Agatha wouldn't have been up this late on the best of days. I picked up a chipped gnome by the front step and fished out the front door key from under it. It slid into the lock and I let myself inside. It was weird entering her home at night. The place had a perfect stillness about it, like it had been left uninhabited for decades. Layla followed behind me, and the old dog stayed put on the front step, not putting a paw further. Layla was about to ascend the staircase when I veered off through the doorway on the right and made my way into the living room. The glass case which once held the heirloom of Strauss's hood mask was now empty. "What's wrong?" Layla said as she crept up behind me, making me jump out of my skin. "The cabinet, it's empty," I replied. "Oh, Norman." She paused and looked past me at the doorframe. "And who are you, my dear?" "My name is Layla," Layla confirmed as stood next to me. "Such a lovely name," Agatha said absently. "Why the late visit?" "Which room is he in?" I asked, though I already suspected. "First on the right," she said. I left the musty room and walked down the short, equally musty hallway to Strauss's supposed bedroom. I knocked on the door, and received no reply. I took the door handle in my palm and slowly opened it. As it cracked open, a torrent of flies escaped from within. Startled, I pushed the door open fully. Sat on the bed with his back to me as a figure. He wore a dark coat, as far as I could make out, and had a bone-white scalp. I quickly realized he was Strauss's hood mask. Suddenly, the funk from within the room hit me, and my sense of smell revolted against my body. I bent double at the grotesque stench, that I can only describe as hot feces and roadkill. I took a step back into the hallway, but not before I noticed the stacks of pots and cups filled with a thick, red, corporeal liquid. As the figure stood, I ran to Agatha's room. Agatha swung her frail legs out of bed, but didn't move much more. The figure stood in the middle of the hall, dark and imposing. The hood mask, unworn for decades, was now pulled tight over his head. The two eye holes had only blackness behind them. His long, black coat fell down to his feet, which were hovering a few inches off the ground. At once he lunged, like an animalistic predator. His pale, bony hands forged a path to Layla's neck and he slammed her against the wall. I was looking in her eyes as the light went out in them. She curled her fingers under the rim of the hood mask and carefully, as she'd done hundreds of times before with her husband, raised it from its face. Suddenly, Agatha soured. It was now that I finally got a good look at the thing's face. Its skin was as white as the hood mask, interrupted only by the blackness of its eyes and the redness that caked its gullet and neck. Its sockets were empty, filled only with a dark bile. I could have sworn I saw a torn nerve dangling from the gape. Its nose looked like it had been ravaged by some wasting disease, like leprosy or syphilis. Maybe both. The same was true for its non-existent ears and lips. Its teeth looked like scattered bits of broken glass, loosely attached to wilting gums. All but its top canines, which were in mint condition. That thing that had been masquerading as Strauss already had more than its feed of blood for the night, but with the way it approached me I could tell it wanted more. I tumbled onto the grass, landing painfully on an old, discarded garden hoe. Taking my phone from my pocket, I rang the police and managed to stutter out what was happening. I gave them the address I'd memorized weeks before and hung up. Every word I spoke aloud felt like yelling out my exact location. I tore the old garden tool from the soil and used it as a makeshift crutch as I limped down the path. I was moving painfully slow, with each step feeling like an electric shock zapping through my legs and up my spine. I could hear the distant battle behind me, the yelping of the dog interspersed with the otherworldly calls of that thing. After what felt like days, I reached the street. I staggered down rows of high brick walls and foliage. My only thought was going forward, away from that killer. I still hadn't gone as far as the bus stop when I heard the noise. It was a rapid pitter-pattern, and I turned to see the figure sprinting down the road with the speed of an Olympic athlete and the intent of a starving big cat. Its stumped feet left trails of gunk behind it on the road, meat scraped away by the rough asphalt. I barely had time to react before it leapt on me, but I did. The rest of that night was a blur. In fact, the rest of that year was a blur. The only other bit that I remember from that night was being sat down in the cop car by the lady who'd found me, and having the weirdest conversation of my. She told me that in October of the year prior that there'd been an apparent murder-suicide. On Halloween night, 2 boys were brutally killed by their Sunday school teacher, who then took his own life. I knew the story well as Gary, the supposed killer, had taught me. The cop told me that this was a baseless rumor, and that she'd been a first responder that night. What she saw in that house was no mentally ill zealot. It was a monster. It was the figure. It was what had escaped her that night, and immediately after went on to pose as the dead husband of an elderly woman for longer than I could have imagined.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite stirs. Hope you're hungry.
I tried to call out but I couldn't, my voice caught in my throat, my lips unable to move. I mustered a weak groan that sounded like a cross between a frog's croak and a zombie's moan, but that was it. I thought I was dead, that this is what death feels like, being awake but unable to move or tell anyone. My mind wrestled with the idea of being placed in a coffin, unable to tell anyone I was still alive in here, unable to move or say anything as the lid closed and they put me in the ground, still alive. My fear subsided as I felt my heart thudding in my chest in response to my near panic attack. I also became aware of my breathing, which slowed as the fear subsided. I calmed a little, thinking it was just a dream. When he stood up, his body unfolded like origami until his head reached the ceiling. His neck bent, tilting forward as his true height was greater than the height of my room. His long black torso was covered in shimmering symbols that reflected red in the light of his glowing eyes. He stood on two spindly thin legs that disappeared into the shadows of the room. His fingers reaching through the darkness, down to my face. Two pointed fingers touched against my eyelids, pushing them closed. I remember his fingertips feeling cool, but not cold. Even though the ends of his fingertips looked sharp, his touch was gentle. I explained what I saw to my parents, who both agreed that it was a dream. My mom tried floating the idea that something from Shrek 2 scared me, but neither my dad or I bought it. For confirmation, Dad asked that I draw a picture of what I saw for them. As I was drawing, I ran out of black crayon and had to finish his legs with the next darkest color in my crayon box. This is how my sleep paralysis demon ended up with the name Mr. Brown Sticklegs. It was a couple months later, the night before my first day of 5th grade, when I woke up to Mr. Brown Sticklegs straddled over my bed, his empty plate of a face inches from my own. A scream stuck in my throat, coming out sounding like a gush of air releasing from a pool float. I saw that he held a piece of paper in his thin fingers, crumpled on the edges and torn. He held it up to show me. On the page was a pink blob with blue dots for eyes and a droll red smile and stick lines for legs and arms. It was lying on a blue rectangle. "I found the picture you drew of me. So I drew a picture of you," he said. "Do you like it? Will you draw another one for me? I so liked the first one, you gave me pants. I look good in pants." When I woke up in the morning, I bolted upright and tossed my pillow off the bed. My heart leapt into my throat when I found the picture. It wasn't a dream. He was real. P.S. I hope you like your blue pants. I added another smiley face at the end of the letter, my final emphasis on wanting to be friends. I considered closing with sincerely, but I figured love was a better, friendlier choice. "Hello Lexi," he said. "Thank you for the picture, I do look good in blue pants." I wanted to smile, but, well, sleep paralysis. He flipped the picture over to the side with my letter. "I will answer your questions the best I can. I do not have a name, not one you could ever pronounce, but I am happy for you to call me Mr. Brown Sticklegs. As for my age, I exist outside of the construct of time, therefore I am ageless. I do not go to school, nor do I know what school is. Why do I visit you? I visit to feed on the energy of your soul." My breath quickened as a mute groan exited my teeth. I wanted to run, wanted to get away from him, but I was pinned down, unable to move. In my mind I was standing on a beach. I felt the salty ocean breeze against my face as I looked out over the massive body of water. The waves crashed at my feet. I felt the rush of water over them followed by the trickle of sand and pebbles as the water drew back. Dark clouds formed over the water as I stared at the white-capped waves. The clouds unleashed a heavy downpour, turning the horizon gray as rain fell from the sky over the ocean. Just as the rain falls over the ocean, your soul can replenish itself by more than I could ever consume, not even in 1,000 of your years. Does that make you feel better? He pressed his fingertips to my eyelids again, closing them. In my mind's eye, I was still on the beach, but the sun was setting, and no stars were visible through the rain. I drifted back to sleep to the sound of falling rain. The next morning I asked my parents for a sketchbook and colored pencils. They tried to hold me off until Christmas, but since I spent most of my afternoons and weekends drawing pictures up in my room, Dad let me open one of my gifts a week early, a Strathmore sketchbook with 100 pages with a 50-pack of Crayola-colored pencils. My thoughts considered his wording, I am not one who could consume an entire ocean. I wanted to ask him if there were those who could, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to know such things. His biggest surprise was when after he complimented my drawings I spoke to him. I hesitated, but finally formed the words in my mind. Are there creatures who can consume an entire ocean? His eyes curved downward, as if concerned or afraid. What do they look like? I asked. I showed you only because you asked, Mr. Brown Sticklegs said, but it is best that we don't talk or think about them. Let them be. I internalized my feelings during that time. I withdrew from my friends and school activities besides the art club, the only one we could still afford. I saw my friends driving to school and hanging out while I rode the bus, too poor and too far out of the way to join in. My tastes began to change as well. Out was the bubblegum pop of Katy Perry, Kesha, and Taylor Swift. Instead I listened to Pierce the Veil, Sleeping with Sirens, and Bring Me the Horizon. My clothes and makeup became darker, more black t-shirts and skirts with black eyeliner and black fingernail polish. Mom called it my goth phase, not that she understood. Your soul tastes different now. The first bottom came when my father died. Drove off the road into a gravel pit late at night with an empty bottle of bourbon in the passenger seat. I cried, but it felt hollow. I felt hollow. Even when Mom tried to hold me, I felt nothing inside, not sadness, not guilt, not anything. Just like that, the trap door opened, dropping me to a new rock bottom of addiction. One thing I had that in common with my dad, but instead of falling into a bottle, I fell into a needle. I stole money from my mom's purse to feed my habits, not that she noticed. She was busy with her old Facebook friend who had moved from online acquaintance to nightly sleepover companion. When the time came to begin my senior year I didn't bother going back. I found certain drug combinations had similar effects to sleep paralysis, where my mind's ability to control my body's action became severed. In those moments of numbed paralysis I'd see Mr. Brown Sticklegs watching from afar as I dulled the pain. I saw what I perceived as the dark ones too, but they weren't hiding in the shadows like Mr. Brown Sticklegs did. Whoever I was traveling with at the time dumped me on the curb in front of the ER, making me someone else's problem. This was my rock bottom moment, although at the time, it felt more like freefall. I spent 3 weeks in a coma. I was aware of my surroundings, and could hear the doctors and nurses as they checked my vitals and tended to my cleanliness and upkeep, but I couldn't move or speak. At the end of my 3rd week in the ICU on an incubator, I looked up to find Mr. Brown Sticklegs hovering over me, his round red eyes peering through the darkness. In my mind, I was beside him, standing in the middle of a vast salt flat desert. The ground was cracked and dry in a hexagonal pattern that stretched in all directions. This is your soul now, there is nothing left to drink. I heard my beep of my heart rate monitor back in my hospital room speed up as fear entered my mind. I dropped to my knees in the middle of the salt as I felt a rumbling deep inside the hollow pit of my stomach. I leaned forward onto my arms, but they were no longer my arms. They were pitch black and empty. I could feel them, but when I looked at them, they were empty voids of smoke and shadow. I stood up on my legs, but they were no longer my legs. The darkness swirled up my torso and down my arms. The emptiness inside me consumed my entire body until only my head remained. Mr. Brown Sticklegs glided down in front of my face, his eyes inches from my own. "Help me," I uttered. "Please." As he pulled back, the red in his eyes had diminished. "A gift, for the girl who gave me pants." A tear formed in my eye. It rolled down my cheek and fell onto the parched landscape below. Before I could say anything, an electronic jolt coursed through my body, pulling me away from the salt flat expanse and back to my hospital room. The sinus rhythm of my heart rate monitor returned to normal. I felt the cool gel of the defibrillator paddles against my chest. I remember squeezing the hand of one of the attending nurses, who smiled down at me. I cried, but it was different than before. I felt the pain I had long been avoiding, but I felt something else as well. I felt grateful, and I felt a sense of hope I hadn't known in a long time. It was a long road back from the darkness, but the thing about the road to recovery is that, like a road, it leads to a destination. After years of listless drifting towards the void, having a destination was an important first step in finding self-love. I reconnected with my mother, who was struggling with her own form of the darkness. We leaned on one another, talking and going to therapy as we worked through the issues that drove us apart. After my release from the hospital, I moved back home with her Facebook friend long gone. I got my GED and used my many sketchbooks as a portfolio to get an apprenticeship at a tattoo parlor. I've been clean for 4 years now, and it feels good to smile again. Granted, I still prefer Pierce the Veil to anything from Katy Perry's catalog, and my tattoos and jewelry have more skulls than fluffy bunnies, but that's all on the surface. I no longer crave the darkness to consume me. I often think about the vision with Mr. Brown Sticklegs on the salt flats that night in the hospital. I had not seen him since that night, and I often wonder about the state of my soul since that day. Has it replenished, or is it still the dried-up barren wasteland that he took me to on the night? Last night, around 3 in the morning, I finally got my answer.
And now, as the hour gets cold, and the shadows stretch long into the corners of your room, it's time.
Yeah. Chew the spooky violin. But seriously, this next one? Even I didn't sleep after hearing it.
I've claimed something coming from you.
What? Just because I sleep in a coffin and collect cursed dolls?
Among other things. This is the final descent for the night. One last story, dragged up from the depths of the disturbed and deranged.
Go ahead. Turn off the lights. We dare you.
This is HorrorSlop.
I think he hated that even more because I was just a constant reminder of what he never got to have. I must admit I became something of a recluse, my windows always shuttered, additional locks installed in my door, letting the phone ring through to voicemail, hiding under my covers with the lights out whenever I got a knock on my door. I stocked up on preserved foods and various goods that I would need to last the year. I was so paranoid that I even covered my mail slot, stuffed a towel in the space beneath my front door. I didn't want anything getting through from the outside world, God forbid, an anthrax letter. Falling off the face of the earth didn't matter much, anyway. I didn't have friends or family anymore. My mother and both of my sisters were dead, and my dad disowned me when I came out as a lesbian after my sisters died. I moved away and severed contact soon after. The night before my 27th birthday, I started getting these strange phone calls from a blocked number. I've always had anxiety about phone calls, so I just let it ring. The number kept calling, at least once per day throughout the past year. Then the knocking started, once a week at first, but it's only been getting worse, more frequent, and the pounding on my door more frantic each time. Convinced it had something to do with my inevitable death, I've been driven mad by the unknown visitor, especially over the past week. I got ready for bed last night, knowing that tomorrow, today, now, is the day I will turn 28. My time had run out, and I searched for comfort in a bottle of liquor. I didn't find it. I fell into bed, drunk and delirious, and prayed the morning wouldn't come, though I knew it would. I eventually got to sleep, but it was restless and unsatisfying. The kind of sleep where you feel like you have one eye open, always watching. Waiting. Watching. Wordless. Leave me alone, I squeaked, unable to move, paralyzed in the power of their presence. My intruders were not a pair of assassins, not human ones, at least. In the yellow light of the lamp I discerned the identities of the dark figures. They were my sisters. Joy stood at the foot of my bed, pale, in that same conservative black dress I'd found her dead in years ago, the one she'd picked out for Moira's funeral. Her head hung parallel to her shoulders, neck grotesquely bent from her hanging. Moira was a few steps behind her. I could only assume it was her, considering the severity of her injuries. She'd suffered a gunshot wound to the head, so brutal that we were not allowed to see her after her death, so intense that it had entirely disfigured her face. The lower half of her face had been reduced to a pit of gore, her jawbone barely attached on one side, her mouth mangled, with only several teeth remaining studded randomly throughout the mess. Joy made a feeble attempt to shake her head, the side of her face only brushing weakly against her shoulder. She waited several moments before putting one of her feet in front of the other, moving towards the side of my bed. As I recoiled instinctively, she slowed her pace. Moira trailed after her until they were both beside me. I whimpered as Joy leaned over me, her head flopping forward suddenly with the motion, neck cracking sickeningly. With her lips brushing against my ear, she whispered, she tried. Her speech was labored and wheezing, as if her vocal cords had nearly been shredded. Her lips moved against my ear once more, but no sounds came out despite a clear strenuous effort. Moira wagered an attempt at answering my query, but only succeeded in sputtering blood from the gaping wound in her face, ejecting one of her remaining teeth onto the floor as her jawbone swung precariously, barely hanging on. She raised one hand, slowly curling it into a fist before striking her knuckles furiously against my bedpost. The incessant sound startling me, I forced my eyes shut tight and pulled my knees even closer against my chest. Moira's knocking seemed only to escalate in volume, seemed to go on forever, until, finally, it stopped. I cracked my eyes open to find that both of my sisters had vanished, that the light of early morning had begun to spill in through the slats of my blinds. It was just past 6 o'clock, the 7th of June, the day of my 28th birthday. I was born at 9:26 a.m., once I learned of the curse, I burned the time of my ultimate expiration into my mind. I only had 3 hours and 16 minutes left to live, if I even had that long. Draping my covers over my head, I resolved to spend the rest of my life asleep. I figured I'd rather pass peacefully in my sleep like my mother did than to suffer a fate similar to my sister's. My plans were interrupted, however, by that damned knocking on the door. The interruption usually didn't come so early in the morning. I decided initially to ignore the strange visitor but pulled the blankets back down soon after as a certain sense of familiarity struck me. The pounding on the door reminded me all too much of Moira's knocking just moments before. He deposited a bright yellow envelope under the door as I requested. I waited quietly for the sounds of receding footsteps before sliding on a pair of gloves to handle the letter. It was addressed to me, simply by first name and with no address. Carefully, I unsealed the envelope to reveal a birthday card. I hadn't received one in years. Bright, sparkling letters on the front formed the words, "Daughter, you're 27. I scoffed at the sick joke. I hadn't received a birthday card since I was a child, and my dad couldn't even get my birthday right. I didn't think he even knew my address. I cracked it open gingerly to read the message inside. Laura. The truth is, I died is because I found the truth behind my family's curse and foolishly told your father. He was in on it the whole time, planted in my life by some secret society to eradicate me. To eradicate us. What we have is not a curse, it is a gift of immense power. The power to heal, but the power to harm just the same. Happy birthday, I love you. Mom. I need to keep myself safe until 9/26, after all. I'm planning on surprising my father with a visit, for my birthday. 10.
And there you have it, dear listeners. One final scream, echoing into the void.
Yeah. Void screams, eternal darkness, I get it. Can I eat now?
We're still on air, Roxy.
Oh no, just the spooky FCC is gonna haunt us for breaking the mood.
If you enjoyed tonight's descent into depravity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and what does he always say?
Stab that bell icon like it's your ex possessed by a demon, and leave a comment telling us what story made you question. I have choices.
And if you survive the night, we'll be waiting.
Same dat time, same that crypt.
You're the reason we have complaints, you know that.
You're welcome.